Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is nearly 8:30 on what is another Monday evening, and we bring you round number 5 of the Porsche Cayman Supercup here with Esport Designs in association with MSL Motorsport Consultancy. We're in the Le Castellet region of France for this evening's race, and we are here at the Circuit Paul Ricard for what is the penultimate feature race of the season. Round number 5, as I mentioned before, and I'm sure we're going to see some excellent action along this 5.77 kilometre circuit tonight. My name is David Wressell, and part of me and myself in this commentary box team this evening is, of course, my partner in crime and good friend Tim Fullbrook. Tim, good evening to you, buddy. Like I say, it's the final feature race, the penultimate, feature race of the season where strategy reigns king. And with a race like we've got this evening, I'm sure we're going to see plenty of action throughout the next hour and a half to 2 hours or so. Are you looking forward to it like I am?
Absolutely, David. Well, good evening to yourself and good evening to everyone watching along. And I'm going to start by saying happy 10th race to the Esport Designs Cayman Supercup. I didn't bring a cake, so I apologise for that. But it's the 10th race we've had in this series. But like we say, round 5 of the championship. And again, one of these feature races which have proven exceptionally interesting. We had a similar sort of battle in Barcelona as we did in Spa, where it all came down to the decision: do you take a fresh set of tyres? In the opening round of the season, we had that battle between BD Racing's Kev Critchley and Zancho's Jack McIntyre that went down to the final 15 minutes. And then at Spa, we had it go down to the final metres in what was the closest finish in the championship's history between Ross McGregor and Luca Burke. The decision there again: do you take tyres? And I'm expecting that same debate to be part of the storyline tonight at Paul Ricard.
Absolutely, and as far as the standings go, we'll bring them on the screen now. As you can see, Luca Burke, despite not able to attend the first race at Barcelona, which you talked about, leading the championship by a measly 3 points ahead of Zancho Simsport driver Ross McGregor, who's had a very consistent season so far. Worst finish of the season last week at Kyalami, but 4th or better in every other race, and of course a win at Spa, as Tim just mentioned there. Kev Critchley, of course, he missed a race and had some incidents at Mazzano in round 2, but he's still rounding up after a win at Kyalami last week. He sits in 3rd on 60 points and still well within a shout of the top step of the podium come the next 3 rounds, including this evening. Jack McIntyre, Jack Noller and Chris Crossman and Jenson Button all separated by just 6 points, with Will Dendy, Ben Hitz and Tom Ryer the standout performer considering the amount of races he's been in so far this season, Tim. As of course we saw him starting from the back last week, started from pole in Spa and still managed to, despite getting caught up in a couple of incidents, come back for an amazing 4th position and had a fantastic race in the back last week. He is really showing us what he can do, and as I know you and I mentioned it last week, I think we're both hoping he's going to be getting a qualifying time in this evening, aren't we? So he can start towards the sharp end and really get his elbows out.
Well, 23rd to 5th at Kyalami is something spectacular, considering that is a sprint race. He's got a shorter period of time to make up those positions. And he said post-race, and he admitted as well early on, that he wasn't interested in qualifying because he joined the series towards the mid part of the season. He doesn't think he stands a championship chance. Well, I completely disagree with that. I think Tom's rapid. I think he could really cause a problem for everyone up and down the grid. And like you say, get in qualifying, Tom. Get up the grid. And I think we could see our reigning champion, Luca Burke, with another contender to battle off if he's going to retain his title. I think Tom's a real dark horse in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, joined a little bit later on in the season with the MSL Motorsport team. And speaking of MSL Motorsport Consultancy's team, we're going to jump on board with a hot lap around this Circuit Paul Ricard track, the 5.77 kilometre track, with MSL Motorsport teammate Jack Noller in that JPS liveried Cayman. Beautiful car as he comes down the start finish straight. Just over a 2-minute long lap. He's going to brake just before, or just around about the 100-metre board as they go into De La Verrière, the S's, to start off the lap. Got to be a little bit careful on that second apex just to not take your track limits. It's very ruthless here at Paul Ricard. Like you see, you've got plenty of runoff, Tim, haven't you, as they come into this very awkward little interior complex as is just starting to get ready to go on to back straight. But yeah, track limits is going to be really key this evening, isn't it? Because it is one of those tracks where there isn't really anything on either side of the black stuff to stop you from running wide or cutting any corners. So they're going to have to be a little bit careful throughout the race, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's one of those circuits that a lot of people complain about in the real world for being featureless and not interesting. And yeah, there's maybe not those same margins of error that we see at other circuits. But this is one of the big talking points. The Mistral Straight, 1.8 kilometres of nothing but pedal to the metal action. I think we're going to see a lot of slipstream trains forming here, because look at this. I mean, we're still going. I've been talking for about 20 seconds, it seems, and we're still going down this straight. You can almost go and make a cup of tea and come back by the time you turn in towards Scene. It's such a long straight. Here, on that exit there, as he runs over the white lines, is a crucial point for track limits, like you say, David.
Yeah, absolutely. You might have seen those three little bollards on the outside. As long as you stay inside of them, it feels really counterintuitive, because you obviously want to stay on the track. But if you go with inside them, you're going to be fine with track limits, and they come into this tricky final sector. It is really a track made up of three separate parts. You've got that tricky flowing section towards the start, of course, like you mentioned there, Tim, the Mistral Straight, that enormous sector 2, and then, like I say, we've got this tricky, almost flowing, but then it's kind of got these little points where it just breaks it up a little bit into the final couple of corners. You've got DuPont at the end, that tight little chicane. I'm sure if some guys get some good runs through De La Torre as they come into that, we'll see some overtaking manoeuvres going to the final corner. But yeah, you can see there just over 2 minutes there around this circuit. One of the longer laps we have this season, but it is one of those, Tim, where, like we say, we've got that strategy to play for. We have got that mandatory pit stop this evening, so there's going to be 4 sets of tyres for them to run for the drivers this evening, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Like you say, we saw in Catalonia they were very keen to change tyres, and I think that was the right thing to do. We saw in Spa it was almost the opposite. I'm very keen to see what happens here, because we've got a track that could potentially, if you don't manage your car correctly, could be quite hard on tyres throughout the race.
Definitely, and we've got these curbs that you need to abuse to find the optimum line. They're quite flat. They're not as aggressive as we see at circuits like Zolder, which springs to mind, with particularly aggressive curbs in the chicanes. Here at Paul Ricard, you're going to be using the ripple strips, rumble strips, if you like, that line the track, and that just exposes you to that kind of extra pressure on the tyres, whether that be you might pick up a puncture later on. We've heard plenty about tyre pressures as well in the first few races this season, and of course the entire of last season. It seemed we couldn't go a post-race conversation without them bringing up tyres and their pressures. So let's see how drivers choose to manage them. Let's see how they go with when they change tyres, or if they do so, because like you say, David, it seemed to be the way to go, not taking tyres at Spa, but only by a matter of tenths. I mean, if you think on the line, Luca Burke was right up behind Ross McGregor when they came out of the bus stop. So incredibly fine margins to play with, and I think we're got to strap in for some more of that tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Luca Burke, you can see him on camera at the moment, just gearing up for a hot lap, of course. 20-minute qualifying session here, and then that 90-minute race. Like I say, they've got 4 sets of tyres, so they have got the opportunity to potentially use a couple of sets in qualifying should they want to. It's 6 o'clock in the morning local time, and it's 13 degrees outside and a fast track at the moment. With the amount of cars we've got on circuit at the moment, I'm sure we'll start to see that grip up as time goes on. But Luca's had a good run through the season so far. Like I say, unfortunate to disconnect in the race at Barcelona, just dropped out just before qualifying started, so it's a bit of a shame for him. However, a first at Mazzano, of course, taking the pole position and the fastest lap and second place at Spa. We've talked about Spa enough times now. I think you know what the result was at some point there, and then took a fastest lap and the second place at Kyalami last weekend. Really, Tim, what Lucas struggled with is the fact that he's up against some guys this season who are absolutely rapid at one lap pace, aren't they? And he got caught up at Kyalami, particularly last week. I think it was 5th that he qualified, and I think if he'd have been a bit further up, he might have challenged Kev Critchley a little bit further. So he's going to have to try and pull the finger out a little bit and try and get a little bit further up the grid before the races tonight, I think.
Well, we saw in season 1 how he was able to get pole position, almost stroll to a pole, if you want, in that season. And really, only Jenson Button was able to reduce the margin over the course of the season and get closer to Burke. But now, really, we've got, I would say, a handful, maybe 7 plus drivers that could take top spot easily. Got 10 drivers that you could make a combination of for the front row. So Burke then finds himself in an unusual position, which is not out front, and he's got to race people. He's got to beat them on track. We haven't seen him in those situations too often. We did last time out at Kyalami. and he certainly proved himself to be a clean and fair racer, obviously having to pass championship contender Ross McGregor. And he was able to kick on and close the gap to Critchley. It almost felt managed from the number 15 BD Racing driver. He was able to just keep that gap, manage it for the best part of 40 minutes. So really, Burke's got his work cut out if he's going to get pole tonight and go unchallenged for what is a 90-minute Grand Prix style race.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see him just coming through the final corner now. He's got Al Buncombe, teammate, close for company in the 23 Rocket Simsport machine. So Luca Burt's going to be the man who sets the stall out in terms of a hot lap of 2:04.9, closely followed by Al Buncombe, who actually, by Kev Critchley, goes quicker. Looks like Al Buncombe might have been on an out lap there. So Kev Critchley setting the stall out even more so with a 2:04.1, 0.8 of a second quicker than Luca Burke. But one thing is worth noting, Tim, is you see Kev Critchley going sliding through the first S's to start another flying lap. Worth noting, I'm just thinking that Kev Critchley probably would have got a fairly decent amount of slipstream down that back straight as we see Tom Ryer. Tim, good news, buddy, because Tom has set a flying lap and it's a good one.
A brilliant time from the number 2 MSL Motorsports car to go top of the pile at the moment, the 2:04.011. Yeah, look, slipstream's going to be important. I'm surprised to see, for example, here, Thomas Lavoie in the number 20 EGT Motorsports car. I'm surprised to see him on his own. I would have thought teammates would have teamed up and get a dance partner around here for the slipstream down the particularly long stretches here into the first corner, and also that Mistral straight that we've mentioned, all 1.8 kilometres of it, and help each other out. But clearly everyone fighting for themselves at the moment, and I'm looking to see some more times come in from further down the field. A new driver tonight, Daniel Handover, replacing Will Dendy at Zanshow Simsport. Excited to see how he does on his debut. He's more accustomed to iRacing than ACC, I'm sure he would admit, but nonetheless, a very clean and very quick driver.
Absolutely, more accustomed to broadcasting than racing. I don't say I've ever seen him on a grid before, so I'm very excited to see how Dan's going to get on. I know he's been mentioned to be a very quick driver. I'm just hearing, I wouldn't say blasphemy in the broadcast director box from Steve Proudley, but certainly not impressed that I've not seen Dan race before. I'll certainly be able to strike that off the bucket list tonight, which is good. But Al Buncombe, we saw there, just backing out of another lap, so it's going to be another lap where he might potentially set a lap time, but I wouldn't imagine it's going to be earth-shatteringly quick, but did get out of the way for Kev Critchley, who's going to come across the line and set another timed lap. Got Tom Ryer, the current pole position man. He's coming through the back end of the track at the moment, coming towards the final couple of corners. Got one of the podium sim racing cars in front of him. I think that's Darrell Upton. Just up the road is Kev Critchley. Sets the stall out once more, 2:03.9, Tim, and times are getting quicker. Track is getting hotter, and it looks like things are just about to start hotting up over the next 30 minutes, and I'm hoping we're going to be in for another qualifying session like we had last week.
I wonder if, as we see, Tom Wright goes to the top spot again, 2:03.825. So he's clearly set about improving already. He's got one of the podium sim racing cars in front, drifting off wide. I think that might be Darrell Upton going across the inside of the first corner. But I wonder, we saw Buncombe slowing down there. I wonder if he was aware that it was Kev Critchley, one of the fastest drivers in the championship, around him on track, and just thought, I'll drop in behind him and I'll let him tow me round. So let's see if Buncombe improves this time around with the number 15 car in front. Well, if Kev was clever, he might have just stopped in pit lane, but no, look, you can see there, that car to the left of your screen now, the dark blue with green accents, that's Critchley, and here's Buncombe trying to latch onto the back of the BD Racing machine and potentially improve his time. 17th at the moment, but no time set.
Yeah, absolutely. But Burke toes Critchley, toes Buncombe, toes Hinden, I believe that is in the background. Series organiser Steve Hinden just coming through scene there in the background. Like I say, they're all taking that hugely wide line, which, as I mentioned, was mentioned on the hot lap, feels almost alien, but is in fact legal to do so, which still baffled me. I remember when I first went for a spin around here, I was very much sticking within the track limits and very quickly realised you could extend a fair bit. As you see, Luca Burke just dropping in behind Kev Critchley there. He's just giving Al Buncombe a little bit of shade from him at the moment, but as it stands, Tom Ryer sits at the top of the standings with a 2:03.8. Kev Critchley a 10th back. Jack Noller currently sitting third as well. It's a little bit close between the two Rocket Simsport cars. Al Buncombe currently sitting at 18th with no time, but it looks like he's kept it clean on this lap, so we'll see what the time is going to be. Puts himself into 5th with a 2:04.3, 5/10 off at the moment. And I'm just noticing, Tim, I forgot to mention this before, but running the GP style pit layout, so they come into the pit lane on the start finish straight rather than the F1 style where they come in just before the final couple of corners. So that's going to make that pit loss a lot less significant than it would normally do, which does throw up the option. You've got the chance to maybe make a quicker pit stop than we would do at most tracks in the calendar this year, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and as well, it's a tricky pit in because there's a bit of a chicane there, lined by walls as opposed to curves. So you've got to be careful and get in clean. As we saw, Buncombe was following Critchley, who actually improved on that lap time as well to jump back up to pole position. And we saw Jack McIntyre there going quicker to go to third. Let's see if Nolla can fight back. Now pushed back down to fourth as he crosses the line, and he stays fourth, but does improve his time. So drivers improving all around. But yeah, a shorter pit lane, definitely in comparison to the likes of Barcelona and Spa. So the pit loss tonight is going to be less than we've seen in the feature races so far. Will that throw up some less reliance on making the stop at the right time? Potentially. Could that open the door for more alternate strategies? Absolutely. Is that what we want to see? Definitely. So let's look forward to those strategies. But first, obviously, it's all about setting the fastest time. And Florian Bauer, qualifying hasn't really gone his way across the course of the season. 13th at Catalonia, 4th at Mazzano was good, but running wide there, as you can see, probably going to invalidate that lap time. As we can see, pulls off the track immediately. So I feel like there's plenty more to come from Florian, and excited to see if tonight he can put to bed some of the pit stop errors that have plagued the season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, got caught up in an incident at barbecue at Kyalami on lap 2 last week with a couple of people coming together. Bastian Zenefels, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, is going to be serving a penalty in the race for that coming together in the last week's round at Kyalami. So there will be a penalty for him. I believe it's a 30-second one. We'll get confirmation of that when the race begins, because that will be applied, and it won't be something he can serve in the pit stop, I believe, is confirmed as well. So it's going to be something that will be slapped on his race time at the end, which is a bit of a disappointment. Speaking of other things that happened last week, a bit of housekeeping for you. There is a pair of Grid Finder gloves on their way to LA for Mr. Jensen Button. Can't attend this evening, unfortunately, but did get the fastest lap courtesy of a couple of the guys already having them last week. So he's taking home a pair of Grid Finder gloves. I hope that when we next see him on the track, Tim, he'll be able to use them and save his hands from the virtual wheel that he's using at the moment. But yeah, fantastic work from him. It's quite weird to say that a former Formula One world champion has got a pair of Grid Finder gloves, and I think the Grid Finder guys were quite amused by the irony of it all as well, weren't they?
Yeah, there were some funny exchanges on social media regarding the fact that they're having to box a pair up and send them across the Atlantic, but I'm pretty sure Button will give them a go, even though he's probably used to the best of the best in the real world. I think he might try his hand, if you pardon the pun, the best of the best in the sim world. So it's a great little award that, it takes the emphasis off, okay, maybe if you're not battling for the points all the way up there, setting a quick and clean time if you find yourself some empty track, and getting yourself a very nice pair of gloves. And also another championship we've spoken about is the Fast Forward, which is the driver with the most places gained wins a couple of tickets to the British Grand Prix. And we saw a bit of controversy last week with that, with a couple of drivers that suggested to be sandbagging, if you like, to avoid setting a qualifying time. So they're now required to set a good enough time, really. Otherwise, they're going to have the eyes of Steve Hinden, series organiser, on them. And that's an interesting championship as well, because once again, qualifying isn't everything, but your race and being clean, gaining positions, it's how you score your points.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron Martin Pilkington leading the way there with 25 positions gained, rather. Darrell Upton, bit of a dark horse, not really talked too much about him in that championship, but yeah, currently sitting second on 21. And then Tom Ryer, unsurprisingly given what he did last week, of course, on 18, seeing as he came from 23rd to 5th, of course. Doesn't get any for being on pole at Spa and finishing 4th. Luckily for him, though, didn't get a -4. But at the moment, he is sitting pretty at the top of the timing charts, 0.02 of a second above Kev Critchley in the number 15 BD Motorsports machine. Jack McIntyre with a good performance so far, a few tenths back in the number 37 Zancho Simsport team, and MSL Motorsport consultancy car, number 36 of Jack Noller, just under half a second back, with Ross McGregor sitting in fifth. And interestingly enough, Tim, I mentioned it a little bit earlier in qualifying that Luca Burt needs to potentially pull his finger out a little bit and try and get a bit of a better qualifying performance in. Currently sitting sixth in the timing charts, half a second off. He's really got to do something in the last 6.5 minutes, hasn't he, to put himself up there in the mix.
Well, and as well, you look at the gap back to Alex Buncombe in seventh. He's only got to find really a tenth on a lap anywhere out there on the track, and let's say a tenth. It's less than half a tenth, and he could knock Burke further down the order. But Passman on screen at the moment, we're hearing, is going quick and improving. He just jumps up to 20th actually from 21st, so an improvement nonetheless. Still coming to terms with the Cayman and with this championship. And just as I was talking about Buncombe finding half a tenth, he's apparently got 3 tenths in the bag. So as he comes to the line, let's see where he goes. And he jumps up to 5th place, so he's bagged himself a spot on the 3rd row. Burke goes back another position. So yeah, let's see where Burke ends up. He is out on track and is trying to improve in the final 5.5 minutes, but it's really game on now for the season 1 champion.
Absolutely. Speaking of halves, Chris Crossman half a second up at the moment. You see what I did there, Tim? As they're coming through the final corner, I'm going to swiftly move past that. That's going to put him 6 tenths off. It's going to put him just in front of Dan Handover. Assuming he's not gained even more time for the last couple of corners. There you see there, 2:04.4. Good lap from him. Luca Burke sitting in 7th place at the moment. He's got 4 tenths, of course, though. So whenever we worry that Luca Burke's not going to pull anything out of the bag, he's already on a lap that could potentially put him, it will at least put him 3rd on the grid, but it could put him up in the top 2 as well. And knowing him, he's probably got a couple of tenths that he could gain through the last couple of corners. Comes into the final chicane. Very important to get a good run out of there. Nice and clean. Doesn't go as wide as you've seen other people do on their flying laps so far, but he's going to come across the line 6th to the left-hand side. Cuts across and loses a bit of time. Ends up 4th, just behind Jack McIntyre. Very, very close to him. So you see Dan Handover going down the Mistral straight. He's 2 tenths up, so he's certainly he's clearly put a bit of practice in, because he's not a slouch so far, is he, in that Zancho Simsport machine?
No, top 10 is nothing to shake your head at in this championship. We know how close qualifying can be, separated by a matter of hundredths most pole position margins. And once again this evening, the gap between Raya and Critchley is 0.024 of a second. Let's see if Handover can improve. Like we said, a couple of tenths in hand at the moment. The final sector, if he can find more time, could see himself launch up to really the 3rd row. We're looking at Buncombe and McGregor under threat from the number 43 Zancho Simsport Cayman. So round the final few corners, this long left-hander at Tour that goes on forever into the sharp right at Virage du Pont. And on the exit, he stays. Well, he drifts over towards the middle of the track. So clearly he's going to be going for another one. He does improve. Wow. All the way up to 4th place. He must have found time in that final sector. 2nd row for Dan Handover at the moment, with 3.5 minutes to go. Great time.
Goodness me, I'm understanding now why Steve Proudley scoffed at me when I said I haven't seen Dan race before. That is an absolute belter of a time from the debutant in that Zancho Simsport machine. That is a fantastic lap from him. Ross McGregor coming down the Mistral straight in towards Tsine. Like I say, going to be putting foot to the floor all the way up that straight. Feels like it goes on forever, especially in these GT4 cars. But we're going to see all sorts of incident and action filled as we go down that straight in the race. So 10th up at the moment, so not necessarily enough to really put himself too much further, but he's just made 3 tenths of a second up through that final corner, through de Busset, as he goes into Bendor now and out through the Garlaban curb and into Latour as he comes around for the final couple of sets of the lap. That's going to put him right up into the thick of things. If he's got 4 tenths in hand, that's probably, Tim, going to put him up onto the 2nd row. Potentially, if he keeps the time in hand, it's going to put him ahead of Jack McIntyre and Dan Handover as the leading Zancho Simsport. He's lost a bit of time though, so he got a 10th as he comes through DuPont. As he crosses the line, like I say, shaping to go for another lap. Does improve, but I'm noticing there, Tim, I'm guessing he's validated the lap, because although it was faster, doesn't move anywhere or change his time on the timing board.
Yeah, he doesn't improve his position, but a driver improving their position. Kev Critchley, whilst we were chatting through the end of that lap there, he's gone faster. So the gap at the top now over a 10th of a second, which is an incredible thing to say, that we score a gap that large in this championship. Mitchell improves. He's now 10th, fighting back still from that Spa-Francorchamps event where he didn't score points for the first time in the championship. He did all of season 1 and all of season 2 to date. Only one race hasn't he scored points, but Tom Ryer on screen at the moment, improving 10th or so up with as he's on this long Mistral straight. And I wonder if some of the drivers might have opted for a lower downforce configuration, but we're seeing sector times really hovering between the 34.5s and the 34.7, so not enough time, I would say, to see anyone with a standout different setup to really improve their straight line speeds. You can see on screen at the moment, that's pitbull.live. That's the timing screen that David and myself can see as Kev Critchley rounds the final corner. Could be improving once again.
Absolutely, going to cross the line. He's got a 10th in hand over Tom Wright at the moment. We know that Tom's got a little bit of time. We can just see Tom going through the final sector at the moment. Kev doesn't improve, but he's got another chance to put another lap in with a minute left of qualifying. Tom in the final sector. He's got 4 tenths in hand at the moment. That is an obscene amount of time, as it looked like he went a little bit squirmy through the curves there as he comes into Latour and into DuPont for the final time on his flying lap. He's going to have one more chance to improve as well if he wants it. But if he's 4 tenths up at the moment, he's certainly not going to necessarily need it, depending on what Critchley can do. Hopefully we'll be able to pan to Jack Noller. Elects to finish his qualifying session early, and Tom improves, but interestingly, Tim must have validated the lap somewhere, because that lap does not count. He still sits in second position.
He's going to be absolutely kicking himself. That was a rapid time at 2:03.390 when he crossed the line, but to invalidate that, he's going to be I'm pretty sure he's going to be annoyed with that, because that would have seen him really extend the gap at the top of the timing sheets, as Chris Crossman, as we can see on screen, getting a tow from his teammate Kev Critchley. And we did speak to them at the end of the previous round at Kailami. They did say if there was an opportunity to help each other out, particularly if one of them was in a championship fight, they would lend a hand. And we're seeing that play out tonight as Critchley pulls over to the right hand side and hands over the baton to Crossman, who's 2 tenths up. He's got to do the work now in this final sector. 2 tenths could see him jump up to the second row of the grid and challenge Daniel Handover. So there's certainly a bit of strategy playing out already.
Absolutely, but Kev Critchley left vulnerable to the driving of Tom Ryer. Hopefully we'll catch his time in a minute. He's still out on track, so he's still putting a hot lap in. He's just coming down the Mistral straight. He's not up at the moment, we're hearing though, so he's not going to be improving as it stands. Tom Ryan, Jack McIntyre, Chris Crossman, Ross McGregor, the ones in the top 10 still to put a lap in. As you see, we've now hit the checkered flag, so it's just a case of waiting to see if anyone does manage to improve. Chris Crossman had 2 tenths coming through the Mistral straight, of course, got a brilliant tow off his teammate Kev Critchley, comes across the line, 2 tenths in hand still. Where's that going to put him to? Puts him up into 6th place, so splits pretty much. Well, he's sitting in the middle of a handful of Sancho Simsport cars, including Jack Noller. Ryan's got 2 tenths. He comes through Latour for the final time. Still a chance of getting that pole position, and of course an all-important point taken away from championship leader Luca Burke, and second and third place men Jack McIntyre and Ross McGregor as he comes through DuPont for the final time. What's the time going to be as he crosses the line? Is he going to take pole? He is, Tim, by a 10th of a second. And that is, in the grand scheme of things, when we consider recent qualifying sessions, that's an enormous margin to take pole position by.
It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? What a lap at the death from Tom Ryer. That's what we've been talking about, banging on about it at the start of the broadcast tonight, that if Tom just gets that lap in, sets a good time, pole at Spa, pole here tonight at Paul Ricard, he's clearly the man to beat in these feature races. But for Tom, it's going to be now eyes on this 90 minutes, because like we say, at Spa, the last feature race, he didn't have it all his own way. He was kind of beaten up by a gaggle of Sancho Simsport cars and the Rocket Simsport machines early on, dropped back down the order, and really through alternate strategy he was able to fight back, as we get a fantastic view of the circuit. I found out, David, over 160 different combinations of this Paul Ricard circuit, but the one tonight is certainly one of the most technical, and you can just see how long that Mistral straight is. Absolutely, and it's one of those, I think, like I say, it is a massive flat track. There's no real undulation in it, apart from a couple of the corners, but it is one of those tracks where from that angle, I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Like you say, there's plenty of runoff, so
we shouldn't hopefully see anyone getting too much damage going into any walls or anything like that, which is a positive. Just in the off chance we do get any incidents coming together, is Steve proudly hops onto the infamous Simsport Solutions Segway to run you through this beautiful looking grid that we've talked about and marvelled over for 4 rounds already, and 5 we count now. And just to bring to your attention, for those of you who are new to the series, you'll notice the little number 1 next to everyone's car number on the left hand side of the timing tower. That is confirmation that they still have their mandatory pit stop to be served, so we'll be keeping a keen eye on that throughout the race. And as well as that, if you are watching via Pitwall Live as well, and they've done a new little addition which has thrown me this evening, where you can actually put your YouTube stream onto that as well, so you can watch it from Pitwall Live, which is quite a nice little thing to do. You can keep an eye on exactly what their stint times and everything like that are as well, so it's a really good way of keeping a track of everything that's going on. One man who will hopefully not have to keep track of what's going on in front of him, though, Tim, is Tom Ryer. Like we say, good lap from him. He's just messaged me. He's very pleased with that. And he's also said that Critchley is super fast, which is something that you and I know very well, and he's going to have to figure that out firsthand, because something we saw last week, Kev Critchley is not only fast, but he is imperiously consistent as well.
Yeah, we didn't see Ryer and Critchley kind of go head-to-head, potentially at Spa, where Critchley missed out. And last time, obviously, at Kyalami, we had Critchley at the front of the order, unbeatable really in terms of his pace from the top of the standings, and Ryer towards the back end of the field, opting not to take qualifying. But tonight they're on the front row, they're side by side, and they'll be looking across at each other when they go out around on this formation lap. So an interesting battle here, because these are 2 drivers. Well, Critchley more so has got a great championship chance if he scores strongly tonight, and Ryer is going to want to battle back into points contention. Looking down the order, though, and a driver who's got their windscreen full of Caymans is Oscar Sandberg. He just dropped into the chat to say, oh my God, I'm dead. So he's back in 18th place, and he's a bit worried about being caught up in some drama. But great shot here, brought to you by Steve Proudley, our broadcast director. You can barely see the end of the Mistral Straight. It disappears almost around the curvature of the earth there. So look, an interesting track here, a different one to the circuits we've battled at so far. And I'm sure we're going to have a thrilling event tonight.
Absolutely, Tim, and we've of course those of you who've seen Formula One here, you'll know it's not necessarily the most interesting race from a Formula One perspective. I think the cars are maybe a bit too wide, and obviously can't really follow through here. But we have seen throughout the last 5 rounds, or 10 rounds, like say 10th race tonight here at Paul Ricard, we know that not only are these cars capable of making overtakes, but we know that these drivers are very much capable of making overtakes as well. And I think, despite the fact there's going to be quite a heavy reliance on strategy, I think we're going to be shaping up for some brilliant on-track action as well. And it's going to be a fantastic evening of racing still to come. We've got an hour and a half race ready and waiting for you. 35 seconds until Tom Ryer will lead us off for a full formation lap and get us ready. It's a fairly sweeping start to the lap, isn't it, Tim? There is a fairly heavy braking zone, but it's not necessarily an overtaking spot. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the guys file down as they go into the first couple of corners. And it'll be interesting to see when we really start to see the first overtakes being manufactured.
I think down through, like you say, through turns 1 and 2, it's a really difficult point, because it's quite a long run actually from the start-finish line. So from where they'll collect the green flag and charge down towards turn 1 for the first time at racing speed, I think really we won't see cars file down until we head out turn 7 and onto the Mistral Straight. But really then there's another opportunity for cars to start bunching up again in the slipstream. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of side-by-side through this first lap and a half, really. I wouldn't be surprised to see us only achieve single-file racing once we get onto the backstretch for the second time. Drivers do need to be careful. Live stewarding is taking place tonight, so we're not leaving the decisions up to the Assetto Corsa Competizione in-game steward system. We've got the team from race department having a look over proceedings tonight, and we've seen how they have handed out penalties. They can take quite a stiff look on any action that is deemed to be the fault of a particular driver. But we did see last time at Kyalami that they're all for a bit of door banging and some clean but fair and hard driving. So look, we've got plenty of window for racing tonight, plenty of opportunity to have overtaking action, and I think unlike the Formula One, we're going to see lots of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also just noticed, albeit virtually, it's nice to see that in the stands around the back end of the first sector they are social distancing by the looks of it, which is always a nice element to see. So very good implementation by the Kunos team to put that into the sim for this evening. But yeah, 22 cars on track. Aaron Martin Pilkington, one of the guys at the back. He's going to be, in fact, apologies, he is the last one. We seem to have lost a driver. I'm not entirely sure who that was.
I think it's Bradley Brockies potentially has dropped out. He was in pit lane for the entirety of qualifying.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so one of the Team E-Brit guys unfortunately having to drop out, which is a bit of a shame. So 21 drivers, even I know there has been a few apologies for people who aren't able to make it, which is always a shame, but unfortunately, like I say, some things do come between it. However, there is prizes up for grabs for those who do complete a minimum of 6 races. So the guys will want to be attending all of them if they absolutely can do. And as you see, it's the only time tonight, Tim. We hope that we're going to be seeing drivers going at a fairly pedestrian pace down this straight. It's a little bit of an odd one to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, something seems quite wrong, doesn't it, about these cars just kind of cruising down what is a flat-out section. David, I was just going to add to your point about the social distancing virtual fans. If you go to the Imola circuit in ACC, the fans around the track are actually wearing face masks, which was added to the virtual world when that track joined the ACC track lineup. So a cool little addition there from the game developers, but plenty of fans around the stands tonight, plenty of people as well watching on from home, and one driver who's going to be hoping to be socially distancing for the rest of the 20 other Caymans will be Tom Ryan. He's quick, he's fast, he's at the front row. Let's see how he handles this time, being on pole position.
Absolutely. Just to come back to Imola, of course, that is where we head to for the final sprint race of the season next week. I'm going to be keeping a very keen eye, and I want everyone to spot it. When they do see people with masks on in the crowd, I want you to spot it in the YouTube chat and let us know. That'd be nice to see indeed. And then, of course, we round off with another 90-minute feature race to end the season at Silverstone in 2 weeks' time. But Tom Ryer bringing us through the final sector of the formation lap. Kev Critchley alongside him. It's an all Zancho second row of Jack McIntyre and Dan Handover. Luca Burke with BD Motorsport driver Chris Crossman alongside him, 5th and 6th. Jack Noller and Al Buncombe, 7th and 8th. And Ross McGregor and Regan Mitchell with a good showing, rounding out the top 10. We've talked a few times about how Regan's not necessarily been the quickest man in qualifying, but has always pulled it out in the race. So hopefully he can have a good showing from 10th on the grid. But Tom Ryer rounds us through the final corner on this formation out through DuPont as he gets everything ready. You can see them starting to bunch up. They're now in double file as they have been for the last couple of corners. We are waiting for the flag to go green for this feature race here at Paul Ricard, and we are green here as you see. Tom Ryan getting a good start off the line. Luca Burke with a fantastic start going up the inside. It's a Zancho Rocket Simsport lineup going into the first corner in that second stanza, and as Tom Rye gets the inside line into the S's, Kev Critchley just files in behind, and it looks to me like we've managed to just about get through cleanly. No scuppers or anything at the moment. Looks like they're all running through it. Tom Rye's got a massive gap off the first couple of corners. That's because obviously Kev Critchley had to almost compromise his entry into that corner. He's got Luca Burke for company behind him, Jack McIntyre sitting in 4th, Al Buncombe just behind him. Dan Handover dropped a few positions off the start. Chris Crossman as well, Tim, up into 5th place, so he's going to want to try and get a few more positions to try and support his teammate Kev Critchley for the rest of this race, isn't he? But all in all, a fairly clean start so far, which is good to see.
A fantastic start, and drivers side by side. Looked like we were 5 wide towards the middle of the pack. It was like a cycling peloton arriving at the first corner, but now it's certainly going to turn into more of a sprint as they head back down this Mistral straight. Look how these cars start closing up in the slipstream. Jack McIntyre reducing that gap to Luca Burke by a couple of car lengths as he's in that tow behind, but turning into Signa as they go 3 wide in the background with Steve Hind, Regan Mitchell, one of the EGT Motorsport cars there. That's David Belanger trying to fight his way into the top 10. Florian Bauer running wide, just able to cut back in. A gaggle of cars as well behind, running wide off the track and getting back onto the racing surface. But at the moment, Critchley under fire from Burke, who looks keen to kick on and not let Tom Ryer escape at the front of proceedings.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Tom Ryan's managed to gain about half a second so far over Critchley, but they look to concertina up as they go through the final sector for the first time into Latour and into that heavy stopping zone at DuPont to finish off the first lap as we've still got, obviously, of course, we've got an hour and 28 minutes left to go, so still plenty of time for positions to change. Pierre-Olivier Cloutier with Steyn Passpont close for company. It looks like Bastien Zenefels and Steve Hinden may have got caught up in an early skirmish. They're a couple of seconds back off this train. Otherwise, everyone seems to have got through the first lap with relative cleanliness. You see one cone gone now. There's only 3 left to go, gentlemen. If you can knock those off by the end of the race, I think we'll be in for a clean sweep. And Tom Ryer still leading the way. Now what he's got to do is he's got to try and gap them, Tim. Try and make a bit of a gap because, I was going to say Luca Burke is looking racy on the back of Kev Critchley, but actually it's Jack McIntyre looking a little bit racy on the back of the number 87 machine. So Luca, he was the pressurer before, now has turned into the pressuree coming onto lap number 2.
I'm checking my dictionary, David, to see if pressurer and pressuree are actual racing terms. But yes, look, I think Critchley had a great run through that first sector, and if anything, Burke didn't have the cleanest of times through that opening sector, lost a few tenths, and that's going to be crucial because here on this back stretch now, Critchley's going to be benefiting massively from the toe of Ryer. In fact, they start weaving from left to right. Ryer keen to break the toe for Critchley, but he's made one move actually and stayed fairly consistent to his racing line as they're backing up now behind. Side by side, Buncombe and McIntyre on the run into scene, but McIntyre's still getting the benefit of the toe off the back of Burke. Buncombe's going to slide up the inside of his Rocket Simsport teammate, who just seems to understeer out wide. That could open the door for McIntyre as they go side by side, and indeed McIntyre gets through. So in the course of 1.8 kilometres of racing, Burke's lost 2 spaces to his teammate and one of his close rivals, Jack McIntyre.
Absolutely. F1 take note, that's how you overtake it, Paul Ricard. What a beautiful move that was from Al Buncombe. Just used the slipstream to full effect and got the move done going into scene. And I was a little bit worried there that Luca Burke was just going to be a little bit too late on the anchors and very nearly tapped the back of Jack McIntyre. Fortunately, no coming together between the two of them. Aaron Martin Pilkington a few places up. He sits in 18th at the moment, close behind the back of the 2 EGT motorsport cars of Pierre-Olivier Cloutier and Thomas Lavoie. David Belanger from that team a little bit further up, just off the outskirts of the top 10. Florian Bauer gaining a couple of positions. Jack Noller lost a couple off the start. He was a little bit further up. He was in 6th off of the start, but 7th off the start, but dropped down a little bit. He's got Bauer for close company, who's, of course, as we mentioned, going to be hoping for a better run of it this evening. And interestingly, just looking at the timing tower, Tim, Tom Ryer currently leading the race still. It's Kev Critchley, half a second behind, a 1.5 second gap to Al Buncombe. That's going to be outside of slipstream range for the top 2, which is going to put Al under some significant pressure down the Mistral Straight, and he's perfect for the top 2, who can really just start to potentially work together a little bit and start to extend that gap even further.
I was going to say, is it going to be a case of trying to drop the peloton behind, work together, maybe exchange slipstream if needing to do so, and just able to run around cleanly and keep that pace high and drop this field behind? Because look, there's Buncombe, McIntyre, Burke, handovers just in camera shot as well as we look back from the number 37 Zanshow Simsport Cayman of Jack McIntyre. You can see the train of cars down the back of the stretch, and look how much of an advantage Burke gets in the slipstream, and actually he chooses just to back out of it and stay in behind McIntyre. So Burke not willing to fight too hard early on, potentially an early sign from our reigning champion that he wants to work with those around him to just start splintering off into different groups and really start breaking up this train of cars which are benefiting from the slipstreamers. In the background there, I think there was a couple of the EGT cars around, with Darrell Upton going side by side with Oscar Sandberg, who's fought his way up a few positions into the points now. So it's all changed at the top and it's all changed at the back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the back of Jack McIntyre, all over the back of Al Buncombe at the moment as they come into Le Tour on lap number 3. You can see the difference that slipstream makes. Kev Critchley was half a second behind Tom Ryer going into the second sector, and then after the straight he's now within 3 tenths. So you can clearly see the difference. I'm understanding that we should get confirmation in a minute of, unfortunately, a penalty for series organiser Steve Hinden. He's going to be getting a 30-second time penalty, which explains why himself and Bastien Zenefels a little bit further down the field. There you go, confirmation there of, in fact, the number 64 machine. That is Zenefels tapping Regan Mitchell, and there you go, 30 seconds for Steve Hinden for causing a collision with car number 64, which is Bastien Zenefels. And our first pit stop maker, Tim, and Martin Pilkington is elected for a very early pit stop. You'd like to think he hasn't gone for some fresh rubber, because that would be pretty irrelevant at this early stage in the race. So he's going to try and make the race on one set of tyres. effectively becomes that yardstick for us to measure it to. He's an 18th before the pit stops. We'll have to see when people do start to peel in for their own stops where they'll come out in respect of him.
Interestingly enough, I think he'll be out of any slipstream kind of benefit as well now. He'll be on his own, out on track. So I'm not too sure if that's the best decision. Yes, I understand getting out of traffic and running cleanly. He may have picked up some damage as well in the opening lap. So an interesting strategy call nonetheless. We saw McGregor do a very early stop at Barcelona, just pitting outside the hour mark. As side by side, we're nearly 3 wide into scene. That's McIntyre alongside Burke, who's now opting to take the position back as they run into the right-hander. He's going to park the car on the apex a bit and try and block the run for McIntyre. He cuts to the inside and late on the brakes, gets the job done just about. But side-by-side stuff here, David.
Absolutely. Dan Handover's going, I want some of that action. Look at him down the inside, going into De Beausset. Nearly got the move done. Very opportunist from Dan there, and very brave considering it's his debut with the Zancho Simsport team in this season, in this series this evening. So he's not holding back on sister team driver Luca Burke. Fantastic stuff from them. You see confirmation of Steve Hinden's 15-second penalty being applied on the timing tower, or 30 seconds rather, of course it was. You just have to apply it in 15-second increments. As you see, he's been applied with that, so he's going to have that. I would imagine that's going to be applied to him at the end of the race. I don't know if he'll be able to take that during his pit stop, but I'm just looking towards the top of the timing tower. As you see, it's Zancho going down the main straight. Dan Handover, I saw they're getting on the brakes down the start-finish straight. He's got that much of a slipstream. We've now lost another cone, so we're down to 2 from 4 now. But Tom Ryer, Tim, starting to gap a small amount from Kev Critchley. Nothing too significant, but 8 tenths, especially going down the Mistral Straight, is really going to make the difference in terms of the slipstream.
It just shows you the pace Ryer has got, because on that previous lap of Paul Ricard's circuit, Critchley set his personal best time, but still fell away from Ryer. So that shows you what pace is in that number 2 MSL Motorsport Consultancy Cayman. So really the top 2 though have managed to gap themselves away from the rest of the field, which is this battle pack on screen at the moment. Although Bunkum's managed to pull 1.2 seconds over McIntyre, who's half a second in front of Burke, and that's Handover, you can see from the shot just placed on the rear left quarter panel of Luca Burke's number 87 Rocket Simsport car. And look at the advantage Handover gets in the slipstream. He's going to jink to the inside. They're now side by side. Burke's actually getting the slipstream of McIntyre. So again, these 3 are nearly all side by side on the run in to the right hander, and that's bringing Crossman back into play as they all run wide over the curb. It's so disconcerting when they just run over the track there. You think they made a mistake, but actually it's the fastest line around. Speaking of making a mistake, actually looks like behind there, that's Handover, who's dropped back slightly and is now under fire from Crossman as they go into the left hander, able to keep the number 3 BD Racing car at bay.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the benefits of that of this Paul Ricard track there, of course, you see, Steve Hinden just shifting himself up the inside of Stain Passpont there in the 444 Simsport Racing Cayman. Nearly got the move done, but it was an ever-closing door, wasn't it? But yeah, it's almost beneficial for them, because there's no real gravel. Well, there is, as far as I know, there's no gravel traps around this track whatsoever. So if you do run wide like Dan did, fortunately for him, it's not massively caused any issue to his race, and it looks as though, based on the timing tower at least, he's managed to hold on to 6th place. And one thing I'm looking at is the fact that if you look at Pitwall Live at the moment, again, if you're not, you want to head to pitwall.live and select the Simsport Solutions server to catch live timing of this evening's race. You can see on the track map just how close everyone is at the moment. We're starting to see some battles form. You see Steve Proudley bring it up on screen. 1 cone now left. I'm just making sure I keep track of them whenever we see them disappear, but as they're starting to form into battle packs, that top 10 or 11 team are barely separated by more than 3 or 4 corners. So it's really showing the relentless pace that everyone is going at, despite the fact that even the top 2 guys have disappeared up the road a small amount. It still shows how quality this field is throughout the race.
Yeah, it's almost the meat in the sandwich, really, isn't it? And the only crumbs that have fallen from the table at the moment is Aaron Martin Pilkington, who's about half a minute back of Thomas Lavoie down in 21st place. And yeah, really, that's just the name of the game with this slipstream train. You can see again how important it is as Burke closes up. He's side by side with McIntyre. He has got the overlap and the speed advantage into scene as they go into the right hander. Burke back up the inside. Wrestle's P4. 87 now leads 37. So a close battle between these guys. It's going to be costing them some time. Bunkum able to just keep clean and keep on pounding round. He hasn't really managed to drop them too much. 1.1 seconds is the gap. As we see McGregor now getting past Crossman. This is for P7. Crucial for McGregor's championship fight. He's obviously in second place at the moment. Mr. Consistency, as we've said. So now up into 8th place, sorry, and looking to kick on. Let's see where McGregor can find himself at the end of the remaining hour and 17 minutes. David, it feels like we've had an entire race already.
Absolutely, we've had plenty of action so far in the race, haven't we? And it's a fantastic spectacle here in the Le Castellet region of France, just outside of Marseille so far. And yeah, Ross McGregor puts himself up into 7th position. That was where he finished at Kyle Army last week, of course. Faded towards the end of the race, unfortunately for him, in that sprint race last week. He was in 4th. He was actually up into 3rd and 2nd at points in the race, but unfortunately just faded off towards the end and lost a couple of positions to the guys around him. So he's going to be looking for a better performance. Didn't necessarily qualify as high as we might have expected him to in the session this evening, so he's got a little bit of work to do. Luca Burke, his championship rival, currently sits a few places up the road in 4th. The good thing for Ross, though, the good thing is he's got Dan Handover in front of him on the road. The bad thing is that although his teammate Jack McIntyre is ahead of him as well, is the fact that Jack's actually very close in the fight for the championship as well. So I wouldn't expect to see Jack just get out of the way, whereas it could potentially be we might see a little bit of team orders with Handover and McGregor over the next few laps, assuming, of course, Ross McGregor's got the pace to catch up towards Dan. You can see the gap at the front. Still 0.8 of a second, ebbing and flowing as it stands. Both of the guys setting very quick laps. Kev Kutry setting a purple lap of 2:04.0, 300ths of a second quicker on the last tour than Tom Ryer. 3.2 second gap back to Al Buncombe, who's just in the foreground. Luca Burke we're focusing on in 4th. Jack McIntyre, Dan Handover in 5th and 6th. Ross McGregor, Chris Crossman, Florian Bauer and Jack Noller round out your top 10. One person I'm paying a bit of focus to, Tim, is Regan Mitchell. We talked about how he's probably outperformed the car in the race as opposed to qualifying. It seems at the moment, just based on the positions, is Steve Hinden looking at the inside of Stain Paspon into Debussy. Lovely move at the inside. It's such a wide corner, and he's just managed to make that move. Got a lovely run through there. Fantastic overtake from him. But just going back to Regan Mitchell, it seems like he's doing the opposite of what we normally come to expect from the Simsport Solutions driver. Normally imperious in the race, normally makes up positions, but this time he's had a good qualifying session and seems to be dropping a little bit back down the field at the moment.
He's kind of hovering around as we see. Wow, look at that. That was Pierre-Olivier Cloutier going up the inside of Darrell Upton into the left-hander there at Le Tour. That was a bit of a side-to-side clatter, wasn't it? So the number 21 now a long way ahead of the 39. Looks to have dropped back behind Bastien Zenefels. But yeah, a really good point about Mitchell. We spoke to him at the end of last season where he really upped his game and actually had a podium finish at Donington Park to round out the season. And he said, look, if I can find some time in qualifying, if I can be inside that top 10, that's really going to help me in terms of fighting when it comes to the race. But only once this season has he started inside the top 10, and that came the opening round at Catalonia where he started 4th on the grid. So after that, it's been 11th, 15th, 12th, and then tonight he started the race in 10th. So look, qualifying, obviously not Mitchell's strong point, but I'd be surprised to see him claw his way back up the order once pit stops and strategies start playing out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's one thing you can never discount is Regan Mitchell in a 90-minute feature race, because he seems to have the head for it. Seems to be so consistent and really makes the moves count when he needs to. But at the moment, Luca Burke is not making the move that he wants to count because he's still sat behind Al Buncombe. He's closing up. Seems to have dropped Jack McIntyre to the tune of 1.3 seconds. Then got Handover for close company behind him in the sister Zancho Simsport car, but it's Rocket Simsport running line astern. Luca Burke following Al Buncombe. Al not necessarily playing any team orders if there were any, because he's staying in front of Luca at the moment. Wonder whether that will change in the next couple of corners, because Luca is closing every apex at the moment. He seems to be a lot quicker than Al as it stands. So they go through Le Tour as they're on lap number 8 now. Amazingly, we've had 8 laps so far, considering they're over 2-minute laps around this Paul Ricard circuit. Al Buncombe getting a little bit wide there, and looks like Luca's going to try and make the move down the start finish straight. In fact, looks like Al might have just dropped off the gas a little bit there, Tim, because it looks like it's going to be Luca shifting himself up into third position. Potentially, yeah, seems confirmed. That may be a bit of team orders from the Rocket Sim Sport machines there.
just to keep up to date with the cones there at turn 1, David, there's one very sad sideways looking cones. There's still one remains. But yeah, Buncombe really just playing no fight really to Burke, moving aside, letting him go. And wonder if now Buncombe will play some sort of rear gunner for our season 1 champion, because behind we do have that group of McIntyre, Handover and McGregor look to be potentially kind of straightened out now, sorted out. They're not battling and passing at the end of Mistral straight every time they go through there now. So I wonder now if Buncombe's just going to be in that position to act as a stopper, really, as a cork in the bottle, and open up some opportunities for Burke in terms of strategy and margin back to the battle pack. But I do love these long shots because you can really see the gap between the cars. And look, just as the camera panned round to the left there, you can see all the way up to the race leaders. So every time you get onto this long straight, you can see the cars. You could be back in 15th and see the race leader, so you can get a really good judge of where your race is at, if you're losing time or gaining time. And indeed, if you've got someone for company, they'll be all over your rear mirror and rear bumper by the time you get to the end of that long straight.
Absolutely, yeah. We see just a little bit further down the timing charts, Oscar Sandberg elects to make his pit stop. That promotes Aaron Martin Pilkington up to 20th place on the grid. And yeah, really have to keep an eye on Luca Burt now, don't we? And just see how much time he can gain on those guys in front. They're not battling, we know that for certain. There's an 8/10 gap between Critchley and Ryan at the moment, so it's all as you were for the top two. However, a little bit further down, Kev Critchley's BD Motorsport's teammate Chris Crossman under pressure from Florian Bauer in the eSport Designs car, the sister machine to that of Steve Hinden. I can see on the timing chart as well, Pierre-Olivier Cloutier getting a 15-second penalty. I can only assume that's for that, dare I say, elbows out move on Darrell Upton before, as that's Oscar Sandberg sitting at the front of the pit lane, which is a little bit odd. I do know he has mentioned earlier he did have his COVID vaccine earlier today, so he might be a little bit under the weather, bless him. So I wonder if that's why he's still sat in pit lane, but that looks like he might be out of this race and finishing right at the bottom of the pile. But yeah, Florian Bauer. Oh, go on, Tim.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's actually a bit of just awareness from Oscar. As we know, he's very successful in the real world Caymans. He's a race winner, Nürburgring 24-hour class winner. I think he was trundling down pit lane, as I can see on my track map. He has got going again. He was about to rejoin right in front of the race leaders from his pit stop. So I don't think he was stopping through force of needing a break or struggling. I think he was just stopping to let the pack go through, and he's rejoined a lap down now in between the back of the field and Aaron Martin Pilkington. So yeah, some good heads up driving there from Oscar to not get involved and cause any problems.
Absolutely. As we turn our attention to Chris Crossman under increasing pressure from Florian Bauer, he's going to try and get up the inside into Scene. Looks like he's going to make the move. Goes very late on barely any brakes at all, let's be honest. Goes very wide, but again, we know that's all right as they come into Dubose, that double apex right-hander. It feels like it goes on for an eternity as you almost V off the entire corner, and you're practically on the power so early as you hit that apex. But Florian makes a lovely move on the BD Racing number 3 machine, and now Chris has got to now focus his attention trying to make that position back and try and catch up, because he wants to try. I'm sure he'll be wanting to try and just get a few more positions up the road and see if he can get a little bit closer towards his teammate Kev, just to provide a little bit of support if needed, because at the moment it's MSL followed by BD Racing followed by Rocket, Zancho, Simsport. So he's a little bit lonely up at the top, is poor Kev. He has got Tom for company, but of course no teammates there. And you see Jack Noller currently rounding out the top 10, just a second or so off these guys, still bringing some pace. But I think maybe I know he's been busy with other stuff. He's got exams and stuff. I've just noticed as well. The cone has finally left us, so we're coneless as Chris Crossman sliding through the S's there. He's elected to take the infield. I wonder if he'll have to give up the position. I'm sure Tim he'll have got a track limit warning for that. But yeah, as you can see there, Jack Noller, just talking about him, was sitting in 10th, gets himself up into 9th position, courtesy of, dare I say, a very rare mistake from the BD Racing machine of Chris Crossman.
All that hard work in qualifying of helping each other out, Critchley offering the tow, has kind of gone to waste now as the number 3 car has dropped down the order to 10th place. But yeah, Chris, we saw was so clean last time out at Kyalami, and he's here to have fun. We heard that from him. He's here to just enjoy himself and to enjoy some very close racing. he's certainly going to have a smile on his face and enjoy battling back through the order tonight, because 10th place is certainly not where his teammate Kev Critchley could do with him being. Look, you want that second car. Okay, it might not be second in terms of any team decision, but if Crossman was there in 6th, 7th with the Zancho guys, could really cause a problem when it comes to pit strategy and just keeping the competition occupied, whilst Critchley opts to try and make up time on right. As we see a very wide moment from McIntyre, manages to hold on to it through Debose, gets the car gathered up together, and it's almost just one big blue blur here, isn't it there, David, because there's 3 Zancho cars all together on track.
Absolutely. It doesn't help that they're that close as well. They are literally line of stern, and you could barely separate them with a piece of A4 paper. They're so close between each other. It's McIntyre followed by Handover, followed by McGregor. So Dan Handover having a very promising debut in that Zancho Simsport car, the number 43 machine at the moment. I'm sure he'd be very pleased with that. Oscar Sandberg has gone back into pit lane, so I wonder if that is a retirement for the Turn 1 esports car, the number 120, which is a shame. Like I say, he was feeling a bit under the weather, so not unsurprising if he does elect to drop out, but it's always a shame to see anyone drop out of this race for whatever reason it might be. But yeah, Dan Handover certainly putting in a good display so far. He's certainly not looking out of his depth. Like I say, I've been told off as thinking that or for not necessarily knowing what his credentials are, but he's certainly proven them so far this evening, because he's in the middle of 2 very quick drivers who, of course, as we know, are fighting for the championship. However, if they continue battling like they are, because they're trading blows a little bit. You see Dan going a little bit wide as they go into Virage de Camp. That really tight right-hander sets them up for the start for the back straight. Sorry, they're the more they battle, the more they're giving up time to the guys in front of them. As Steve Hinder lost a place to Bestian Zenefels, they've been battling hammer and tongs throughout this race so far. Of course, Steve slapped with a 30-second penalty for an incident with Bastian on the first lap, loses a position out of the final corner and doesn't manage to do anything. But Dan Handover under a bit of pressure now. Tim, Ross McGregor looking to use that slipstream to full effect,
as he's closed right in, hasn't he? And interestingly, there must have been some sort of exchange through the first sector. I did see that Handover made a slight mistake into the right-hander at Virage de l'Hotel. So as we see, actually, McIntyre all running right off the track again. As to the inside goes McGregor, lick the stamp and send it, gets the job done. And he's got the move done on his teammate. So now 33 in front of 43, 6th place for McGregor, working his way through the order. And I've said before that McGregor seems to get the job done. He's a bit of a silent warrior, isn't he? He just gets the job done nicely, doesn't grab too many headlines, but that was certainly a front page pass there from McGregor on Handover at the top of the standing. So Ryan Critchley is still just gapping everyone else and looking like they're going to settle the dispute in the final hour. So some really interesting racing and battles above and at the top of the field and further down. Just wanted to add that with those Zancho cars, I'm very grateful for Jack McIntyre running some yellow rims on his Cayman, because that helps differentiate the cars that all run that uniform blue and silver, the Zancho colour. So thanks for that, Jack.
Yeah, I did notice that. They look quite nice, actually. It's a nice little change to the rest of them. I have noticed as well that Stain Passport, unfortunately, looks to have dropped out from the race, because we've now only got 20 runners. I know he normally stops in by the stream if he ever does have to retire for whatever reason, so hopefully we'll get confirmation from him at some point as to what's happened, because it's a shame to see him. He was involved in quite a bit of action as Florian Bauer. We turn to a bit more action for him now, all over the back of Dan Handover, who's been dropped by a relative ease from Ross McGregor after making that move in the final sector. He's now got he's now formed a quartet with himself, Florian, Jack Noller and Chris Crossman, who's dropped a little bit further down, of course. Well, in fact, we saw him drop down a minute ago, and as we can see on the timing tower, Al Buncombe and Luca Burke switching positions as well, but Florian Bauer getting the slipstream all the way down the Mistral Straight, all 1.8 kilometres, in case we've not mentioned the length of the straight so far this evening, as he peels to the inside as they go towards Scene. He looks like he's just along the inside. He's just overlapped him, and that is a late move from Florian Bauer. That is absolutely elbows out. Fantastic move from the number 10 driver, and Jack Noller's looking to make a move as well, very opportunistic. Is he going to get down the inside into Debose? He's not. He's just about had the door shot on him. Chris Crossman elects to go for a completely different line altogether there, Tim.
Yes, it's such an interesting corner, that, isn't it? It's almost like a corner from an oval, like your Martinsville or whatever in NASCAR. It might be a little bit flat, not too much camber, but it just opens up to an alternate line. And we saw there, it all nearly came to blows with Nola trying to go up the inside and Bauer just trying to float the car around the outside. Handover trying to float around the outside. So some interesting different lines emerging through that corner. But yeah, Handover starting to drop back now and into the clutches of this pack, the bottom half of the top 10. Bauer through now and up into 7th place and looking rather feisty in the number 10 Esport Designs Cayman. But they're still all together and the slipstream is keeping them all together. Wonder if they battle any harder. We might see that gap close to David Belanger in the number 222 EGT Motorsports car, 5.3 seconds off the back of this quintet. But a strong performance from David at the moment in 11th. We've seen him inside the top 10 and best result actually this season, 12th place coming at Spa. So I think David's on for a strong result tonight, and if he can execute a clean pit stop. We haven't really spoken about pit stops yet. We've said about needing to take tyres, etc. But that's a whole nother ball game, is making the pit stop correctly. And if David can do that, I'm sure we might see him close in on this battle, and a top 10 finish could be on the cards for the number 222 car.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Yes, it's going to be one of those. I wonder if he will keep an eye on that gap. It's 5.5 seconds. You can see him in the background at the moment. See if he can close that gap to Chris Crossman to within a couple of seconds, and then just see how the fighting plays out. These guys are fighting quite hard, quite aggressively at the moment. You see Florian Bauer shaping to the outside. I say Florian Bauer going to the outside, Handover going to the inside. As Florian Bauer, goodness me, he's going to need planning permission to go around that far outside of scene at the moment. As the Jack Noller going up the inside of Handover, it's going from bad to worse for the number 43 machine as Chris Crossman up the inside into Bosse as well. But it's going to change to the outside as they go into Virage de Bendor, as they manages to hold on to the position. Does Handover there, so he's only lost 1 of 2. But yeah, just going back to what Belanger might be doing, in fact we'll come back to that in a second. Thomas Lavoie with Steve Hindon and Darrell Upton for close company, it looks like there. Steve dropped down a little bit, he was fighting with Zenefels a little bit earlier, but he's going up the inside. Bit of contact between the two of them there. Looked like Thomas Lavoie just turned in where he probably didn't need to. Steve was very much alongside there. It will be notified to the stewards. I doubt anything will happen though. Steve then gets the inside going into Bendor again. Then it's one of those corners where you can take a multitude of different lines through there. And again, Thomas Lavoie being pushed out, but he's not having any of it, Tim. He's really keeping his foot to the floor. An amazing defence from the EGT Motorsport driver there. He's been caught up in a couple of incidents so far this season, but barring that little bit of contact into DeBose, that was fantastic defensive work from the number 20 driver there, wasn't it?
Well, even with some scuffs and scrapes on the side of that EGT Motorsport car, it certainly looks the part, as we see Handover coming under pressure from Crossman very intensely. I wonder if Handover could be struggling with pressures. I wonder if, first time in this series and pushing on with the competition around him, maybe he's struggling with pressures from taking the curbs too hard, pushing very hard in the opening half an hour to make an impression early on, and whether he's taken some life out of the rubber underneath him. He's going to certainly have to roll the dice if he wants to take any time back on his competition, as we see Noller looking to the inside of Bauer on the run up towards Scene. Noller looking very quick at the moment. They're side by side towards the right hand, and Noller on the inside. Bauer's going to try and hold it around the outside. In fact, cut back 4 wheels over the right hand side. Can't quite make the opening there, so a change of position. Noller up to 7th, Bauer back down to 8th. But this battle for the lead, David, is closing up.
Yeah, absolutely. But Critchley now within half a second of Tom Ryer as they come through the final couple of corners into Latour and into DuPont. So we shape to that being your main picture now. We see the Florian Bauer and Jack Noller battle at the moment, sitting in your picture-in-picture. So these two guys closing up a little bit. They've managed to create quite a significant gap of 8.7 seconds back to Al Buncombe as it stands, probably nearer 9 seconds at the moment. And yeah, really starting to break away. And as a result, wonder if they're thinking now, yeah, we've got a little bit of grace period behind us. We've got a little bit of time. Maybe now Kev's thinking, Yeah, I can probably battle with Tom for a couple of laps now, put the hammer down a little bit, or potentially just try and put Tom under a little bit of pressure and then maybe get the pit stop in and try and catch him off guard. All remains to be seen. Like I say, strategy is going to start to come into play very shortly, I think. We'll start to see drivers maybe cutting the race 50-50 and just going 45 on one set of tyres, 45 on another. It remains to be seen. As Al Buncombe, Tim, getting a drive-through, clearly been doing a few too many excursions in the first half an hour, and as a result has been slapped with a track limits penalty, unfortunately.
Yeah, no warning from the stewards about any sort of car-to-car incident there. So Buncombe definitely taking liberties with the white lines, and he's run off the track one too many times and has picked up a drive-through. And that battle for the lead has definitely intensified. I wonder whether Critchley's just preparing now for a stop, put the hammer down, close the gap up to the race leader. I wonder if we'll see that number 15 car just dive to pit lane off sequence and unexpected. Looking at the track map, everyone started to spread out now, so could see him rejoin into a nice window. I'm looking down towards potentially the 222 of David Belanger in 11th, maybe a little bit further down depending on whether Critchley chooses to take tyres. As we see Florian Bauer as well now picking up a drive through for his troubles in 8th place. That will be another track limits abuse penalty. So 2 drivers inside the top 10 will need to make a visit to pit lane. Or one more time they needed to, and is mandated in the Esport Designs Cayman Supercup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a surprise. I think it was always going to happen. At some point we're going to start seeing the old DT flash up on the side of the screen, so it's just interesting it's happened so early, of course, especially from someone like Al Buncombe. I know that Florian Bauer's been battling hammer and tongs with a handful of people, Jack Noller, Dan Handover, Chris Crossman, to name a few. So it's interesting to see that it's not necessarily interesting to see it's happened to him, but Al Buncombe getting pinged for it as well is one to keep an eye out for. You can see he's now he's serving that as we speak, so he's dropped right the way down. This will be interesting and something potentially for these two guys at the top to keep an eye out for, because although it's only a drive through, it will give them a bit of an idea as to where they'll shake out. And like you said, Tim, it's going to be a real key point as to where they end up out on track, because if they come out in between Belanger and Crossman, which looks unlikely just based on the fact that Al Buncombe's only just left pit lane, that's kind of the position you probably don't want to be, because you're going to be in a battle of quite a few drivers really going for it at this moment in time. If you come back out potentially around sort of 12th, 13th between Mitchell and Clements, that's going to be a good position, because it's going to give you that chance with some clear air, hoping you'll be a little bit quicker than the guys around you as well, make a couple of moves, and you'll get a nice bit of clean air. As we see Steve Hindon and Thomas Lavoie both looking to serve their mandatory pit stops. As you can see, they've entered pit lane according to the timing tower on the left hand side.
Well, Critchley was actually looking up the inside there of Raya, so he's clearly not wasting any time. And yeah, like you say, Buncombe rejoining in well down the order. He's now behind the number 39 of Pierre-Olivier Cloutier, so drop back down to the outskirts of the top 15. And like you say, a great measure for the drivers who are yet to make their mind up as to what their strategy is going to be, because that was clearly Buncombe just serving a drive-through penalty. Interestingly enough, he's not too far away from Aaron Martin Pilkington. They're separated by probably over 30 plus seconds, but with a tyre change, if you opt to do that and potentially adding some fuel into the car as well, we could see that number 626 car brought right back into the action, considering he stopped 5 minutes into the race. But yeah, as we head into what is the final hour, the final 55 minutes, Raya and Critchley going at it, closing up on the back of Thomas Lavoie, who's rejoining after making his mandatory pit stop. It's certainly time to start doing your calculations and working out when you want to pit, as Ross McGregor from 7th heads to pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. You see Steve Hindon has served that 30-second penalty in the pit, so he'd have had to sit stationary for 30 seconds whilst that happened. In fact, actually, just seeing that, Thomas Lavoie has come back out. He had a 15-second penalty for coming together between him and Darrell Upton. He's now had that slapped. In fact, no, apologies. Pierre-Olivier Cloutier is the one who got that penalty. Thomas Lavoie has got another unrelated 15-second penalty. Hopefully we'll get confirmation shortly as to what that's been given for. As you see, Ross McGregor enters pit lane, so the first of the proper top runners to go in. You can see there a 15-second penalty for car number 20 for causing a collision with car number 80. That is Thomas Lavoie and Mr. Series organiser himself, Steve Hindon. So that might have been that little coming together we saw. We saw them very close on track a few laps ago. So I wonder if something little bit worse has happened. But yeah, realistically, these guys now they're probably starting to plan their pit stop phase. They'll be getting everything ready, making sure they've got all their pressures set up on the pit wall, on the pit strategy screen, making sure they've got the right fuel to go in, because they won't be able to make a full race on one load of fuel, So really just making sure everything's set up, and yeah, Critchley getting so close to the back of Tom Ryan now. It seems to me, Tim, that it's only a matter of time before Kev elects to drop into pit lane, because you have to think he could potentially go even quicker if he had a little bit of clean air in front of him.
Yeah, he's starting to get caught up now, I think, with Tom, and I reckon it's a good opportunity now to dive to pit lane and make that strategy call and split the race in half. They're clearly both going very fast towards the end of this stint on lower fuel and tyres that have done. We're going to do nearly 40 minutes of hard racing, so they're lapping very consistently in the 2:04.4s. On that previous lap, they did have to deal with that little bit of traffic, which I'm sure cost them just a slight amount of time as they went past Thomas Lavoie. But good pace that's very consistent from these two, considering that they're starting to look in their mirrors and make a decision with strategy. As we see Florian Bauer heads to pit lane, wonder if he'll be taking his drive through or indeed making his pit stop. He'll have to do both. His drive through won't count as his mandatory visit to pit lane, but all this change has elevated Chris Crossman back up to 6th place, Jack Noller into the top 5, but plenty of pit stops still to play out, David, and I'm wondering whether we're going to see some split strategies from those who need to make a jump. Look, Crossman, who's a good few seconds, nearly 20 seconds down on the race leader. Does he just pit and not take those tyres? Because we've seen the difference in pit time is around 15 to 20 seconds. That would leave him right up towards the sharp end.
Yeah, only the drivers will know what they're going to do in terms of times. We'll try and keep you abreast of whether we do know if they've changed tyres or not. We can get a rough idea. I know you're very good at it, Tim, in determining how long their pit stop's been, so we might be able to get you a rough idea as to whether they've done it or not. One thing I am noticing is the fact that Aaron Martin Pilkington, of course, we saw him pitting on lap number 2, I think it was, to serve his mandatory pit stop. He's actually come out, he's come out. He's actually appeared ahead on the road of Ross McGregor, who pitted from around about 7th or 8th position a couple of laps ago. So realistically, you're wondering whether Aaron Martin Pilkington is actually going to jump up quite a few places and end up a fair way into the top 10, and that's going to do his fast forward challenge all the world of good. Of course, 25 positions gained in the 4 rounds up until this point. He's already gained 5 positions this evening, so that puts him on to 30, and it looks like he's going to be gaining a handful more before this race is out. We already know he's going to definitely go ahead of Al Buncombe and Florian Bauer before the race is done, because they obviously had their drive-throughs to serve. But yeah, interesting. It's going to be really keen to see how he ends up in this. But Ross McGregor managing to close the gap quite quickly to him at the moment.
Well, looking at the times, David, as you alluded to, we get a rough idea of who's taken tyres and who hasn't. McGregor's time in pit lane, a 1 minute 10, compared to Aaron Martin Pilkington's 41 seconds. So a gap of about 30 seconds in pit lane. That could point the finger towards not taking tyres for the driver of the 626 Simsport Solutions car. So Aaron Martin Pilkington attempting to go the distance on one set of tyres, and Ross McGregor already closing the gap down to 2.3 seconds. Another symptom of the fact that number 33 Zanso Simsport car might have a fresh set of rubber on it.
Absolutely, yeah. Must be a case of, like I say, Aaron just starting to struggle on those tyres. Sebastian Zenefels electing to peel off in to make his mandatory pit stop, but as it stands at the top, Darrell Upton as well, podium sim racing car number 21 machine, also making a pit stop as well. Kev Critchley all over the back of Tom Ryer as they go down the Mistral straight. It could be a time where he makes the move. Tom shakes to the inside just to cover him off, makes that final move to defend, and Kev just sits behind him a little bit further. You see a kick of oversteer as he hits the curb under a bit of braking. There's a tiny amount of brake that you're going to put on as you go into scene there, as they go down into De Bosse. As you now go a little bit further back, it's another BD racing car. This time the one under pressure is Chris Crossman from Dan Handover, who looks to make the move round the outside into scene. We're seeing scenes so far as Steve Hinden, the back marker, gets out of the way and absolutely destroys that little bollard for good company as well. And Crossman just drops back into 7th place, and as a result promotes the Zancho Simsport car up into 6th. Like I say, it's been a really good showing from Dan so far. Obviously, all of these guys still have to make their pit stops, but a good showing from these guys at this moment in time.
And we were looking at, I was just going to say, we were measuring that Buncombe stop. He served a drive-through. He's been battling now with the likes of Pierre-Olivier Cloutier and getting through past the traffic that was around him. So look, he's going to definitely lost plenty of time in that, and his pit stop's going to cost him even more so. So he's going to have to take tyres and fight through with fresh rubber. As we see, Ross McGregor flashing the lights. He's now got past Aaron Martin Pilkington for what is P14 on the road, but the race lead of those who have made their pit stops, as you can tell by the green block next to their name on the timing tower on the left-hand side, is Daniel Handover, another driver heading to pit lane.
Absolutely. I saw Aaron Martin Pilkington and Ross McGregor flashing the lights down the Mistral straight. Only they will know why they both felt the necessity to do that, which is always a fun one to try and decipher at this point in time. Florian Bauer peeling off into pit lane as well, so he's now making his mandatory stop. Of course, it's his second actual pit stop because he had to peel through pit lane to serve that drive through he got a few laps ago. Kev Critchley and Tom Rye, your current top two, and have been since the top end of this race. They've been at first and second line astern for the first 43 and a half minutes of this race so far, with 47 still to go on the timer. They are still sitting pretty at the top. Got a 9-second gap back to Luca Burke. That's waning a little bit at the moment. It was 9.5 seconds the lap before, but they have had back markers to contend with as well. None of them shaping to pit at the moment, Tim, so still going out and hot lapping as it stands. Realistically, you would have to think that whatever one of them does, the other one, realistically, assuming one of them doesn't take tyres, the other one has to do exactly the same, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and looking at that strategy playing out, Handover has rejoined the track behind Ross McGregor and Aaron Martin Pilkington, so I reckon that the debutant tonight has matched his teammate in terms of strategy and has taken tyres as well. So 14th on the road, but behind two drivers who have made their mandatory stop. He's going to have to kick on and catch Aaron Martin Pilkington for position. As we see, Kev Critchley has opted to blink first and he's in pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep an eye on how long he takes. He's just coming into his pit box now. 30 seconds is the time you would take to change your tyres and put fuel in. If he doesn't change tyres, that would probably only be, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds maximum in the pit lane, depending on how much fuel he puts in. So Tom Rye released, well, I say released, he's no longer got pressure behind him for a lap or so. You see Chris Crossman, BD Racing car into the pit lanes. Also both the BD Racing cars pitting on the same lap. I wonder if that is orchestrated by those two drivers. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, double stat just coming through my ears from broadcaster Steve Proudley. Fortunately, that's not something that has to happen in ACC. Fortunately for those two, otherwise Chris would be feeling a little bit aggrieved because it can be quite a lengthy pit stop in these simulation races. However, yeah, as I say, and Tom Rye just getting a little bit of clean air now. Bit of a chance not to have to look in the mirrors for too long, and we'll keep an eye on him very closely to see, Tim, when he next pits as Kev Critchley exits the pit lane. So you would imagine, just based on the amount of time that's covered there, I would think that Kev's potentially got a fresh set of rubber on.
Yeah, so 1 minute 11.694 time spent in pit lane. That's from pit in to pit out. So yeah, I believe he's taken tyres as well. So that really puts the onus on Raya to take a fresh set of rubber or risk coming under fire from Critchley in the closing moments. We have seen it done. We did see McGregor go all the way at Spa on one set of tyres, but tonight at Paul Ricard, with track temperatures rising as well as we tick over towards 8 a.m. local time, I think we're going to see the track become more abrasive and more harsh towards the Pirelli rubber on these Caymans. But Raya staying out for another lap. He has got clear road ahead of him. The next car up the road on track is Florian Bauer, but there's a good 5 seconds or so. So plenty of track to play with at the moment as Luca Burke heads to pit lane. So now we're really going to see whether pitting early or pitting late is the best strategy this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, we'll have to keep an eye on whether they actually elect to change tyres as well. We'll keep an eye on Luca Burke's pit time or time in pits, and we'll keep an eye on to see whether he comes out in relation to Kev Critchley, who is effectively now the man to watch in terms of where people are coming out on track. That'll give us a really good indication as to whether they've taken tyres or not. Pierre-Olivier Cloutier under pressure from John Clements, who's got a drive-through penalty. It looks like he's about to serve that now. Again, that's going to be for track limits. David Belanger in the EGT Treble 2 machine going into pit lane. You see Kev Critchley on the track at the moment. He's currently sitting down in 10th position, but like I say, he's got an enormous gap ahead of him to the man in front of him on track, which was John Clements. It will now be Pierre-Olivier Cloutier.
Burke's out.
And that's Luca Burke out of the pit lane. Tim didn't take tyres.
No, 50 seconds spent in pit lane. So Burke opting for the alternate strategy. This is it. We're seeing this battle play out again. Burke trying to take his set of tyres the entirety of the 90-minute race distance. The onus now is on Critchley to close that gap and use the fresh rubber, because he's only got 43 minutes now to wrestle the net race lead off our championship winner from season 1.
Absolutely. This is exactly what we wanted to see, isn't it, Tim? Guys doing converse strategies. Luca Burke does not take tyres. Kev Critchley, I'll get it right eventually. Kev Critchley does take tyres. And so we're waiting to see now just what Kev can do over the next 42 and a half minutes. Tom Ryer, I hand the baton to you, good sir. Let's see what you're going to do. He comes out. It looks like he's peeling off into pit lane. He is. Jumps on the brakes, comes into the pits. Now, this is the one we're going to want to keep a lookout for. He had a 9-second gap to Luca Burke behind him as he came into pit lane. If he doesn't take tyres, that gap you'd think would remain the same. If he does, he'll come out very, very close to Kev Critchley. I'm just going to check to see what the timings have been for Kev on the last lap. In fact, it hasn't come through yet because he's only just exited pit lane, so it's a 3:03 on the last lap. So hard to say at the moment, Tim, exactly where he's going to come out. But you'd imagine Tom surely can't take tyres at this stage just to cover off Luca Burke.
Yeah, that has really got a headache now caused by this strategy split. If he takes tyres, he's going to have to kick on in the final half of this race and close the gap to Burke. Alternately, just try and stay out on that rubber. We did see him, I believe, at Spa. He didn't take tyres and tried to battle on to the end, so he has done it before. But as Burke rounds the final corner, Raya is yet to get going, and with his pit clock now going over a minute, I'm confident in saying that Raya has taken tyres. So let's see if he rejoins. Kev Critchley going down start finish as well, so it's going to be very close between these two.
Absolutely. Looks like Tom Ryer's going to come out with a little bit of breathing room from the BD Racing car, the number 15 of Kev Critchley. Luca Burke resumes what is effectively the net lead of this race. Of course, it's Jack McIntyre on track who leads from a second and a half back to Jack Noller in the 36 MSL Motorsport consultancy machine. Regan Mitchell in the Simsport Solutions 69, 20 seconds back down the road in P3. And Pierre-Olivier Cloutier sitting in fourth position as Al Buncombe, Tim. Another drive-through penalty for track limits. That man cannot catch a break this season.
Difficult stuff for Al. He's clearly pushing on. I don't think he'd be making those mistakes if he wasn't trying. But that's really going to decide his race tonight. Back into the top 10 after making his pit stop. But he's going to tumble down the order.
Absolutely, yeah. As you see, Aaron Martin Pilkington got David Belanger close for company. Another man who's not changed tyres like Luca Burke. And you see David Belanger shaping to the inside as they go into that first sector complex into Barrage de l'Hotel. A lovely move there from the Canadian. It makes the move. He's got Dan Handover a little bit behind him as well. He would have changed tyres, you would assume. And that Simsport Solutions car, the Rouge car, as opposed to the Noir of Regan Mitchell, starting to become a little bit susceptible to the overtakes given he's not changed his tyres. Jack Noller heels into pit lane, so he's serving his mandatory pit stop. Jack McIntyre, you can see on your screen at the moment, currently leading this race. Interestingly, Tim, I know he's a little bit further back off of Luca Burke as the pit stop phase has started. However, if he doesn't elect to change tyres, interesting to see. We'll have to keep a keen eye out. He's got a 7-second gap between Luca Burke and Tom Ryer that he could potentially slot himself into if he doesn't elect to change rubber in his pit stop.
Yeah, and it's a really difficult situation, I think, if you go later into the race, because you see all these stops play out, and we saw previously Will Dendy get stuck behind the likes of Ben Hitz and Tom Ryer, who had pitted and not taken tyres, and that decided his race at Spa-Francorchamps. So really it does all come down to which side of the coin you pick, and at the moment it looks like, although Burke's decision not to take tyres is great, it's the gap's coming down as Noller rejoins the track in what is, well, he's right behind Ryer there. So Noller, I reckon, not taking tyres indeed a 53 seconds, almost dead actually in pit lane. So the MSL Motorsport car number 36 going to be trying to go the rest of the race on this set of tyres.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the timings as well, Tim. Kev Critchley on the last lap at 2:03.8. Luca Burke, of course, who didn't change tyres, at 2:05.4. So massive gains. Tom Ryan's actually taken a second out of Luca Burke in the last lap. So those tyres, it looks to me so far, obviously, of course, getting past someone is a completely different equation. It's all well and good getting up behind them, but we've seen how difficult that Rocket Simsport car can be to pass around the circuits we've been to in the past 9 rounds prior to this, in the 2 seasons we've had so far of this Esport Designs Cayman Supercup in association with MSL Motorsport Consultancy. However, Tom Ryer's taking enormous chunks out of that gap from Luca Burke. So you would only assume, Tim, that changing tyres seems to have been the strategy to go for, because those guys who haven't changed tyres just seem to be getting swallowed up at the moment.
There seems to be no pace, does there, in tyres that are now well over 45 minutes old. And look, I appreciate Burke rolling the dice, because that has thrown in a good mix here as well, and with the likes of Nolla, who's separating Ryer and Critchley, who, as you remember, fast rewind 15-20 minutes or so ago, were leading the race happily and just getting on with things. Now they've had the situation turned on their heads, and they're going to have to push on to make some passes on track, because Ryer, 5.7 seconds, like you say, the gap's coming down, and as they cross the start-finish line, I'm sure that gap's going to have reduced even further, 5.1, so 6/10 in that final sector alone. Fresh tyres really is the faster strategy at the moment, but we've said it before, we'll say it again, it's been said countless times in racing, David, catching is one thing, passing certainly another.
Absolutely, and I would like to think that Tom Ryer's maybe got a small vendetta against the Rocket Simsport and Zancho Simsport drivers from the, should we say, the coming-togethers that they had at Spa. Unfortunate to see those, but hopefully won't see too much of that this evening. Hopefully we'll see, well, we've seen, dare I say it, the cleanest race we've seen all season so far tonight. It's been a fantastic race from everyone's perspective, been some fantastic moves and clean moves nonetheless. We've looked to have lost what Oscar Sandberg has officially retired. He's off the timing chart. We've lost another driver as well. I'm not quite sure who that is at the moment. I'm just trying to use the powers of deduction to try and figure out exactly who that was. I'll try and find out at some point and confirm. However, Tom Ryer sitting in 5th place. He was a second and a bit faster than Luca Burke on the last lap. Did a purple final sector of 54.8, which was 6/10 of a second quicker than the Rocket Simsport car. You see Kev Critchley all over the back of Jack Nolla going down the Mistral straight. Got fantastic toe. And he's going to use those fresh tyres to full effect, shapes to the inside as they go into seam. You can only imagine that Jack Nolla's not going to be able to hold up there on the outside with the scrubbed tyres that he's got on at the moment. However, somehow, Tim, he's managed to prove me wrong, and somehow he's still got the position, although as they go into Debose, Kev Critchley, just showing him a little bit, he's pushing him out as wide as he can, and finally that rubber gave up on the MSL Motorsport number 36 car, and Kev Critchley has got himself up into 6th position.
Props to Jack for really fighting hard there. He knew he was fighting a losing battle, but didn't stop him throwing a few punches just to keep Critchley at bay. It's going to have cost the number 15 though some valuable seconds. I mean, look, 35 minutes to go. I know people will be saying, Tim, but what does that matter? Some seconds here or there battling. Races have come down to a matter of tenths. The last feature race at Spa, where drivers opted for different strategies. McGregor went the race distance on tyres. Burke pitted and took fresh rubber. That race came down to a margin of 0.2 of a second at the line, the closest winning margin in the 10 races so far. We could see that beaten tonight if things start to close up towards the top, and every tenth matters, every corner matters, and every pass on traffic matters, and Critchley getting the job done will be looking to close up towards Ryer, because 4.7 seconds, remember, he was right up behind that number 2 MSL Motorsport car before the pit stop, so he's lost time in choosing to pit early.
Absolutely, and I'm just going back to him. He's had all the bad luck. If you don't have bad luck, you've got no luck at all, although it has just appeared to have been completely removed. In fact, it's been completely removed because Al Buncombe was unfortunately retired from the race. I just noticed he got slapped with a stop-go 30-second penalty for his troubles. That can only equate to speeding in the pit lane, and that looks to have been the straw that's broke the camel's back, because he's disappeared from the server, unfortunately, which is a massive shame because he had a really good race. so far, and you can see the gap between Luca Burke and Tom Rye. It's only 3 or 4 seconds. In fact, it's less than 3 seconds, sorry, on the track at the moment, or just over 3 seconds, forgive me, as Florian Barra elects to drop into the pits, and Jack McIntyre pits from the lead. We'll see where he comes out. I mean, if I'm honest, Tim, I would wonder if he's been aware of what's been going on for these guys, and I wonder if he'll just think, I'll take a hit on track position and just get some fresh tyres on, because it looks like those who haven't done are really, really struggling at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I think McIntyre's going to want to take tyres indeed if he's wanting to fight for the rest of this race. An interesting decision to go as far into the 90 minutes tonight as possible. So he clearly fueled up the car early on with plenty of racing gas to go into this, what is nearly the final half an hour of the race. Yet to emerge from pit lane. We'll see where he does as Tom Rye comes across the timing beam there. And I think, there we go on the left-hand side, in the back of the pit lane is the blue Zansho car of McIntyre. I think that was Florian Bauer potentially rejoining the track as well. He's now down in 16th after taking his penalties. So Ryer in 4th now, which is net really a 3rd place position. But we'll see as McIntyre's stop unravels and the pit lane, pit wall live and the timing screen adjusts. Really will be 2nd on the road. So the race victory is going to come down to an overtake on track, David. That's what we like to see.
Oh, absolutely. This converse strategy has really thrown a cat amongst the pigeons, and I did wonder how Tom was going to have to adapt to it. Of course, it's not necessarily one of those where you saw 2 teammates doing different things. It was very much just a case of, look, we don't work together. It was Kev Critchley, who elected to change tyres. Of course, Luca Burke didn't. They've got no idea what each other was doing, so it's not necessarily something they've done to put Tom under any pressure. It's not like it's made a difference. So you see Florian Barra at the inside trying to unlap himself against Regan Mitchell. Bit of contact, a little bit naughty from Florian there. Just looked like he understeered through Debose there and just went into the side door of that Simsport Solutions Noir car, the number 69 of Regan Mitchell, of course, currently leading proceedings as it stands, but he'll drop down when he does elect to make that pit stop. This is your net P2 man, Tom Ryer. I'm just keeping an eye on the timings, Tim. He is still clawing that gap back. He's just over 2 seconds to Luca Burke at the moment, but it does seem to be, I don't want to say it's stagnating too much. It's definitely still going down in a rate of knots, but it looks to me maybe Luca's just starting to get a bit of a feel for that worn rubber a little bit, and is starts to come back into a small amount, shall we say, because that just all makes a difference. Like I say, if Tom can get right up behind him, if Luca's feeling a bit more comfortable in the car now, that's going to make the overtake a little bit more difficult.
Definitely, but I really think that the fresh tyres now are going to play out really in this final half an hour, because towards the end of this stint, it's a very long stint for Burke. Those tyres are going to be feeling awfully second hand in the final 15 minutes. Really, I'm going to pose the question, how far does Burke fall? And if the only position he loses is to this car on screen, the number 2 of Tom Rye, then he would have done an excellent job, because those tyres are definitely second hand. Again, on that previous lap, he lost a second to the number 2 machine. So rolling the dice paid off in terms of track position, but in terms of pace, Burke's definitely struggling as we head into the final half hour.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not necessarily somewhere that is limited for overtaking. Of course, when we've been at races before in the past, it's sometimes been a bit more difficult to make the move. We saw, interestingly, at Spa, it wasn't necessarily always easy to make the move. However, we've seen how overpowered almost the slipstream is around the Paul Ricard circuit in the first hour of this race as we go into that final half hour. Like you said, Tim, it looks like it's going to be Tom Rye who's going to make the move at some point in the next 29.5 minutes. Question is, can Kev Critchley get onto the back of these guys? You can see him just out of the picture, or just off the back of the picture at the moment. He's 5 seconds back off of Tom, so he's still putting in faster laps, but he's 4/10 slower than the MSL Motorsport car on the last tour of this circuit, lap number 29 at the moment. And realistically, we're just waiting to see when Regan Mitchell and Pierre-Olivier Clotet do end up going into the pits. And like you say, interesting to see how far Luca Burke will drop down if he does get overtaken and starts to fall into that trap, because all of those positions he loses is going to be points lost in the championship to that man in P5, and potentially this man, like we say, still got an outside chance if things go his way of winning the championship. Championship contenders Tom Ryer and Kev Critchley seems to be working in their favour right now. As you can see, look at the gap between them now. It's almost, well, it's less than a second. It's probably, 2 or 3 car lengths at the moment, Tim.
It looks close right up, half a second, 5/10 now for what is the effective race lead between Ryer and Burke. Burke holding on those older tyres. And like you say, David, crucial for the championship. If Burke can hold on to Critchley, he'll be extending what at the moment is a 15-point margin, and indeed is scoring the best out of real championship contenders. Ryer is well down the order in 10th in terms of the standings, a massive 41 points behind the Rocket Simsport car that he's currently trying to pass for the race lead. But that will be one position and one load of points. 1 points deficit will help him claw back the points margin if he now has turned his mind to potentially fighting for the championship. We saw him qualify, we saw him take pole, and we could see him win the race tonight. Half a second the gap, and he's in the slipstream down the Mistral Straight.
Absolutely. Tom, why didn't you qualify at Kyle Army? It's so different. Imagine how much of a cat amongst pigeons he would have been if he'd have been right up at the sharp end. I mean, he was in the end anyway, he was 5th, but look at him all over the back of that Rocket Simsport car. Luca Burke goes to the outside down the Mistral Straight. It's not going to be easy to make the move, and we just got to hope that Luca Burke doesn't have those worn tyres, just pumped a bit of understeer. Tom goes around the outside of Seed, still alongside as they come into Debose. As that double apex right-hander, Tom shapes to the outside still. He is going to, if he can keep round the outside, which he is, he's using that fresh rubber to its full potential. Luca Burke covers off that move as they go into Bendor, as he goes very late on the brakes. I wondered if Tom was just looking for that move at the inside. Tries to get it this time as they go around through the final sector. It's still going on amazingly. I'm amazed how Tom is managing to hold on to this, or sorry, Luca's managing to hold on to this moment as he goes into Tor, right up the inside. That's going to give him the outside into DuPont as just tries to shake over the inside, and so close. The racecraft between these two is absolutely brilliant. Tom looks to have made the move now, and that is a fantastic bit of racecraft for both of them. They're still side by side as they go on to lap number 32 of this race. This is unbelievable stuff from these two drivers battling for what is effectively the lead of this race. They go into the S's on close again. You can't keep your eyes off of this. This is unbelievable stuff. And finally, Luca Burke, I don't think he elected to yield. I don't think he was yielding at any point there, Tim. That was fantastic stuff. And I can only assume that flash of the lights from Luca Burke is more of a fantastic stuff from you there, buddy, because that racecraft from those two there was absolutely brilliant.
Well, Burke on massively older tyres, attempting to hold on to that net race lead. That was fantastic stuff, but I must admit, I almost winced and looked away from the screen as they came into the final corner, because Burke, washing out on old tyres, was up the inside into that final right-hander, and I was so worried that he was just going to run into the side of the number 2 MSL Motorsport Consultancy Cayman. But no, they managed to get through cleanly. A slight hit check through the long left-hander at Latour, but great racing from the both of them, and props to Burke, because like we say, old tyres holding on to that net race lead for a few more corners and making Ryer work for it. But Burke's going to have to do the work all over again, because Critchley is closing in at a rate of knots, and he'll be lining up a pass on the Season 1 champions shortly.
Absolutely. What does Kev Critchley do after he gets past Luca Burke? I mean, that's assuming he can, because Luca didn't make it easy for Tom Ryer on the last lap, did he? So there remains to be seen whether he'll try and do the same. It has meant that Luca has dropped back towards the clutches of Kev Critchley. Just got to keep an eye back. We've got 7 seconds back to Jack Noller, who's behind these guys now as well. So we'll have to see over the next 25 minutes whether Jack can start to make any indent into that gap as you go into the front splitter cam of the BD Racing number 15 machine. You can see how close this top 3 are at the moment. It's still just waiting for Regan Mitchell and Pierre-Olivier Cloutier to make their pit stops. As we do, we see the P2 man of Cloutier going into the pit stops for his mandatory stops. This promotes these guys all up 1 position each. But Kev closing in corner by corner, apex by apex. He's within a second now. He's going to presumably gain another couple of tenths through this first sector. You see how much more confidence he has on that fresh tyres, as he goes through the first S's as they start the 32nd lap. And he's going to be in slipstream range, Tim, as they go onto the Mistral Straight. And we're going to see rinse repeat of what we saw between Ryer and Burke, but with Critchley and Burke this time. And I've got to say, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's see how this one plays out. So we see handover actually just picking up a penalty on the left-hand side. That's a drive-through. So his debut appearance in the series now coming under fire from what is a penalty for track limits, we can only assume. But yeah, Critchley is going to need to kick on and get past Burke as soon as possible, because he's had plenty of pace in this number 15 BD racing machine. And as they head into the second half of the straight, the slipstream really kicks in, and look at this gap shorten as the number 15 closes up to the rear of the 87. We go on the roof cam of Luca Burke. Critchley is almost passed before the right-hander at scene. In fact, he is. Burke tries to fight back on the brakes but can't get it done. Critchley's through. So that multiple corner fight that we saw Burke put up against Ryer, he's unable to do so against Critchley, although he's trying to find through a gap there on the inside. Critchley's left him room, fair racing room as well between the two of them. Critchley moves over to the right, almost says, "Get out of my way, chap, you're not in this one." Critchley through, understeers wide on the second part of the left-hander. Burke's going to try and get the overlap through the long right. Critchley got the shorter course, of course, round the inside line there. Burke still up the inside into into Latour as they go through the left. Critchley will have the inside. So look, Burke really not letting any of these battles go, David.
Oh goodness me, that was quite something. And now he's got. I was about to say he's got another one in front of him. I've been so taken aback by those overtaking manoeuvres by both of them to an extent. I thought that was Chris Crossman ahead of them for some reason. I'm getting very confused in myself, and that has given Jack Noller the chance to really get onto the back of these guys. Well, he's actually, I'd say that he's lost a little bit of time to the back of him, presumably because he's got a little bit of company behind him. I think that is one of the eSport Designers car. I think that is Bauer behind him, who's down in 16th. Not a good display, unfortunately, for the eSport Designs team, back in 16th and 17th respectively. Just to go back to it, we've not really had the chance to talk about it, but it was John Clements that we lost at some point in this race a few laps ago, so that's why we've gone down to 17 runners, unfortunately. So we've had a few retirements, which is a bit of a shame, but those who have continued have done a fantastic job. Big props as well to Aaron Martin Pilkington, who's got himself up into 10th place. That's 11 positions gained to add to his 25 up until this point. So those tickets to the British Grand Prix in July are going his way as it stands. Raya, of course, not making any positions up in this race because he got the pole position, but he does get the point for that. And I'm sure what he'll now be doing, Tim, is focusing on maintaining the win. He's got a couple of seconds gap back to Kev Critchley, but what he's going to be focusing on now, you'd imagine, is getting a pair of those grid finder gloves and getting that fastest lap of his as well. Yeah, definitely, just to really prove a point about how quick they've been this evening. And looking at the pit times between Critchley and Tom Ryer, his pit stop was a 1:08. Critchley is a 1:11. So there's 3 seconds there in pit lane. And the gap on track, David, rather handily, 3.5 seconds. So despite the battling, despite the split strategy, Ryer going basically 2 laps further than Critchley before heading to pit lane. The gap all came down to whatever happened in those stops. Could it have been Critchley missed his marks, or potentially took on 3 seconds more fuel just to cover off those extra 2 laps he'd have to do in the second stint? Whatever it is, the margin between these two seems to have occurred in pit lane. 3 seconds could be all it takes to decide the race tonight. Ryan, though, like you say, he's ahead now on the road with that gap back to Critchley. Burke now is long gone in terms of fighting back because of those old tyres. So if Critchley wants to wrestle the race lead away, he's going to have to find some pace and knock Tom Ryer from top spot. Yeah, absolutely. 0.006 of a second between the two of them on the last lap, which shows you just how close these two have been so far. He's actually gained a 10th in the first sector alone. As you can see, Tom Ryan now starting to claw back the gap towards Regan Mitchell, of course, who does still have to pit, so it won't necessarily be an issue for Tom if he does get too far up to the back of him. And to be honest, I think by the time he does that, I would have expected Regan Mitchell to most likely have dropped into the pit lane to serve his stop as well. You can only, there's going to be no benefit to Regan changing tyres at this stage, so he's going to be, I would imagine he could potentially, Tim, come back out in the top 10. I'm thinking maybe around the Belanger, Aaron Martin Pilkington sort of area he might potentially come out. So if it has worked, the overcut will certainly work in his favour. One person who hasn't had it all his way this evening has been caught up in a couple of incidents. One was deduced by the stewards to be a fault of his own, is this man on camera at the moment, Mr. Steve Hinden, series organiser. He's been very, I think he'll probably be honest with himself, and I think he's probably been a little bit disappointed. He knew it was a step up in the quality that he's managed to bring to the grid this season, and my goodness me, it has been a step up, and he's suffered a little bit ultimately as a result. But this has not been his finest race, has it, Tim? He's been caught up in incidents, and of course had a couple of penalties to serve, which has then shoved him right down to the back of the grid, unfortunately.
Well, we've got to remember that there's a couple of, like we say, there's a few kind of rules and interesting points to play. The different championships or prizes up for grabs in terms of the fast forward competition and the overall championship and the grid finder gloves for setting the fastest lap. But crucially, in terms of championship fight, there's a 7-point benefit. If you complete all of the races, you get an added 7 points onto your tally. That could be crucial when it comes down to the championship fight at the end of the season. I mean, already 7 points would put Ross McGregor in front of Luca Burke, and we know Luca hasn't been able to take part and complete all of the races so far this season. So being out there on track, taking the checkered flag, will really come to help you come season's end if you're in a close championship fight. So Hinden staying out on track, I'm sure, to try and give himself that 100% record and take home those extra points. But interesting, just to cover off what you're saying, David, about Regan Mitchell going so late into the race. This has got to be one of the longest opening stints we've seen in the feature races, 17.5 minutes to go. Like you say, if he pits, it's going to be 50 seconds or so. He's going to have to take less fuel, of course, to get to the checkered flag. I, like you say, doubt he's going to want to take tyres, because what's the point if you've gone this far? You might as well complete the remaining 8 laps or so left in the race tonight. And with the gaps as they are, should it be around 50 seconds in pit lane, he'll come out towards the bottom half of the top 10, could potentially be ahead of Belanger and Aaron Martin Pilkington, like you said. So Mitchell on for a strong performance. Could see him pick up P9 with this exceptionally different strategy.
Absolutely, yeah. He's doing the Renault F1 strategy of old. I know they did that for a few seasons. It didn't really work as well as it might potentially work for Regan this evening, but it's interesting to see someone trying something a little bit different. Big testament to him as well. I did just notice, you may have seen it in the bottom corner, obviously, when it popped up and said his best and last lap times. His best lap time was a 2:05.4. His last lap time was only a 2:05.9, so he's still within half a second, which really shows you the quality that Regan's got underneath him at the moment. And he's really showing that at the moment, like I say, going for a very, very different strategy. He's the only driver not to pit. He is now starting to fall back into the hands of Tom Rye, but I think it will probably be a case of as soon as Tom Rye gets beyond him, he'll either let him through, or depending on where he is on the track at that point, maybe that'll be the time where he'll elect to peel off and serve that pit stop. But Jack Noller, I was talking about maybe whether he'd be able to catch up to the back of Luca Burke. He's barely been able to get away from Florian Bauer, who's right on the back of him, and he's got Jack McIntyre only a second and a half back as well, who's of course fighting for the championship. And just going back to what you said about the extra 7 points for participating in every race, Tim, of course Kev Critchley wasn't at Spa, so that's another 7 points that he will be losing to Ross McGregor as it stands, assuming Ross is present for the next 2 rounds at Imola and at Silverstone in 2 weeks' time.
So all these bits in the small print, David, that you and I have to sift through to make sure we know, but it's good for the competition because it rewards being here and taking part and making the checkered flag at the end of competition. McIntyre on screen at the moment. He did take tyres, I feel confident in saying he did, a pit stop of a 1:06 compared to Noller's, 53 seconds. So McIntyre on fresh rubber, 1.1 seconds behind Noller, who's got that rather pesky looking number 10 eSport Designs Cayman of Florian Bauer, who's not in the fight, but he's there causing a problem. He's probably not getting past Noller because he'll just be getting blue flagged and being told to get out of the way. But by being there, he's almost pulling and helping McIntyre close the gap with a bit of slipstream. So McIntyre closing in, we could see a change for P5 in the final 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. You've just made a very good point, Tim. I completely forgot that Jack Noller didn't actually change tyres, which is why he's not managed to catch up too much on the back of Luca Burke. Of course, but neither of them changing tyres, which means that difference is Jack McIntyre sliding through Bendor there as they go down towards Le Tour for what is the 37th time in this race with less than 15 minutes to go. Shapes to the inside, manages to get a nice clean move on the back mark of Florian Bauer. I'm going to be interested to see whether Florian's got the pace to stick with these guys and just have a bit of fun with it, to be honest. He's not had his most fortunate of races so far. It's not been a positive one for him, unfortunately, nor has it been for Steve Hinton. We talked about them, the eSport Design drivers, not really having it their own way this evening, which is unfortunate to see. But Florian's getting involved in the action, even if he is a lap down, which is what you like to see. Shows the competitive nature. But Jack's going to have his mind focused firmly on Jack Noller and getting some points, and importantly, getting a few points back off of Ross McGregor, and just as importantly, not losing too many points to that man in fourth place at the moment, Luca Burke, because of course these three, Burke, McIntyre and McGregor, are your top three in the championship, so every point counts as we come towards the final 13 minutes of this race.
Well, we praised Burke over the last season and a half with his pace and how at times he's really been untouchable, but tonight again we're seeing how these feature races, and indeed this second season, the level of competition has certainly taken a step up. And I just wanted to give a shout out here to Jack Noller in this number 36 MSL Motorsport car, because over this second stint, so since the pit stops, he's been able to match the season 1 champion on average lap time, the difference really being about a tenth of a second. So really strong performance from Noller, considering that we've seen it as well in season 1. He was exceptionally quick over the sprint races, but in these longer 90-minute affairs, he's able to keep pace with the best of the best in this championship. And another strong result heading his way, but as you can see behind, McIntyre really closing up and wanting to get past in the I was going to say before the checkered flag. He's going to be probably doing it before the end of the next lap.
Absolutely, yeah, he's all over the back of this JAPS John Player Special liveried MSL Motorsports machine. That's a bit of a mouthful, to say the least. There's been a few of them so far, to be fair, but as you see, all over the back as they go into DuPont for another time. Jack McIntyre has a fantastic exit there. You just saw he was so much more confident with the fresh rubber. He's all over the back down the start finish straight. I wonder if he's going to try and make a move to the S's. Shapes to the outside. Jack's going to cover the inside. Not necessarily an overtaking spot unless you're really, really brave, which we know Jack can be. Just elects to sit in behind, maybe try and get a better exit, because you can see Jack's going to compromise his exit through that corner. As you can see, look at the closing speed for the number 37 car and the number 36 machine. Florian Bauer's there for close company as well. I'm sure he's loving being on the back of this, and he'll pick up any scraps he can do if he needs to as they go into the hotel. Oh, as Jack Noller's all over the curves there. You've got them sausages on the inside. I've got to be careful of them as they go into the camp. McIntyre makes the move stick and gets it done before the Mistral straights him. That's going to put him under a little bit of pressure because, of course, as we know, having worn tyres isn't going to stop Jack from utilising every little bit of slipstream that he's going to get over the next 1.8 kilometres.
Let's see if he can fight back, but we saw that advantage of fresh tyres really pay dividends in the final sector of the lap, and indeed the opening few corners. Just that traction out of the corner allowing McIntyre to fight, and it looks like he could be getting a little bit of a bump draft, Jack Noller, from Florian Bauer. They're so close. In fact, he's close right up to McIntyre. He's looking to the inside into Scene. Can he get the move done? Yes, he gets past Florian Bauer's trying to go through. Proper throwing a cat amongst the pigeons as they go into Deboso.
I know that we say this is the eSport Designs Porsche Cayman Supercup in association with MSL Motorsport Consultancy, Tim, but I didn't think we'd be seeing the two of them effectively work together to really frustrate and irritate Jack McIntyre. This is amazing to see. It's almost like watching a little comedy sketch, just seeing Florian Bauer. He's like that pesky little barnacle that just won't disappear. Paul Glover wondering in the chat whether 10 pushed him forwards. I didn't see if there was any contact, and I know that the race department stewarding tool that they've got will pick up on any contacts. I wonder if that's appeared on their stewarding sheet to have a look at. Either way, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a bit of friendly bump drafting, and Jack Noller somehow is managing to carry on up the road. I'm just hearing from Steve Proudley, broadcaster, he can see that as well. It does look like it has popped up, so I wonder if there's a little bit of a touch from the two of them. But I think that's all fair game, to be honest, Tim. I think that's brilliant gamesmanship from Bauer, just giving the MSL Motorsport driver just a little bit of a nudge and saying, go on, you make that move. I know you've got worn tyres, but I believe in you. Go on, get past him and have another go. Yeah,
as we see McIntyre trying to fight back and really wrestle that position off Noller that he believes he deserves. And yes, to confirm what our broadcast director Steve Proudley was saying, as McIntyre's getting all kinds of crossed up behind Noller, is on the timing screens. It's come up as an accident involving number 36 at 23 minutes past 9. So that was on the previous lap around, and on the back stretch there was indeed contact, which has been flagged in game, which means, I get to the end of my point, it will be flagged to the stewards to have a look at. As we see Noller breaking the hole in the air, he's going to be a sitting duck to McIntyre. As we get confirmation, no further action from the stewards. It was a bump draft. They see no issue with it. So fair game. Play on, boys.
Absolutely, as Jack McIntyre around the outside of scene. Florian Bauer is still there, and I can imagine he is thoroughly enjoying himself because he's just being a nuisance with these two at the moment, and I love to see this at the moment. He's not had his most positive races. Jack McIntyre just drops to the outside there. Looked like he was maybe a little bit too hot coming up behind Jack Noller, and I wonder if he's just done that bit of avoiding action just to try and avoid nudging the back of the number 36 car, as he's so close going through Bendor into Corbel Agalaban as they go into the final couple of corners for another time, and somehow Jack Noller is still ahead as they go into De La Tour and into DuPont for one more time. Jack McIntyre is going to go to the outside, but he can't really go for the line he wants because Florian Bauer is just sat there on the apex almost, just stopping him from taking the run he wants. I wonder if he was just trying to get a better run onto the start-finish straight, but that little number 10 machine goes, no, I'm going to sit here, pal. I'm just going to sit and get in the way and frustrate you even more. So I wonder if Jack's going to be getting a little bit hot under the collar in that Zancho Simsport car, because he's thinking, well, what would have been a really simple move a couple of laps ago has now turned into a bit of a ding-dong battle that he really didn't want.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to line up the clean exit out of the final corner and engage rocket boosters and get past Jack Noller. As we saw, he was flashing the lights on the run into turn 3. He's closed right up as they go through this technical section that rounds out the opening sector. McIntyre as close as he has been to the back of that number 36 MSL car, but he's there now, surely as close as he's going to be. I wonder if anything he's too close to really get a benefit from the slipstream and shake and bake slingshot his way through. But as they go side by side down the Mistral straight, he's on the outside, the right hander it seems. So let's see if he can go all the way around the outside on the fresh rubber. Meanwhile, someone needs to tell Regan Mitchell that he needs to pit in this race with 6.5 minutes to go. He hasn't made his mandatory stop.
Absolutely, and one thing I'm really disappointed about, Tim, is the fact that Florian Bauer has got a second, in fact it might even be a third drive-through penalty for this race for track limits. He's really been using the most of it, as he does again. Goodness me, look how wide he goes there. Fortunately for all of them, those little bollards do appear to be stuck in the ground, and they'll ping back up again as Jack McIntyre goes down the inside into the second apex at Debose and finally makes the move stick. You'd think that is move done as they go into the final sector. So Florian's going to have to drop into the pits, which means these two are going to be released to do what they've wanted to do for the last 3 or 4 laps, which is just battle between themselves. I am a little bit disappointed that he's not managed to do it. And Tom Ryan now 1.7 seconds off of Regan Mitchell. Kev Critchley is closing that gap, but with 5.5 minutes left, it looks like it is going to be victory, barring any mistakes or incidents for the number 2 MSL Motorsport machine. He is P2. The number 2 is in P2 at the moment. Of course, he'll jump into first as soon as Regan Mitchell makes his pit stop. Big shout out to the man on screen though, Tim, Aaron Martin Pilkington. We've talked about him a couple of times. He's going to be massively ahead of the Fast Forward Championship at the moment with 36 points. I think he's going to be a bit relieved to finish this race because he's been caught up in incidents all the way through, and he's got Pierre-Olivier Clotet for close company behind. He's going to be clinging on like a desperate man for that final 10, or for that top 10 position, because he's been on worn rubber just like Regan Mitchell for the entirety of this race, and he's done a fantastic job so far.
Well, it's 10th place at Kyalami, and he's set for a 10th place tonight at Paul Ricard, so he's certainly finding his feet in this Porsche Cayman. And I'm interested to see now, really, how long is Regan Mitchell's stop going to be? I wonder if there's a way our broadcast director Steve Proudley can find out how much fuel Mitchell's got on board, whether there's an onboard camera or something we can try and read the dashboard, because Mitchell's stop with 4.5 minutes to go, he's only going to need to take enough fuel to do a couple of laps. It's effectively going to be like serving a drive-through penalty, one of those we saw earlier in the race for Al Buncombe. didn't cost him too much time, around 30 seconds. And with the gaps on the screen at the moment and the gaps between the order, we could see him actually come out in front of Chris Crossman if my maths is correct, which it's not always. But I mean, Mitchell, with 2 laps to go, it's really taken this one late in the race. He's done 1 hour and 26 minutes behind the wheel. He's just headed to pit lane just as I say that. So Regan finally heard us shouting behind the mic that he hasn't pitted. But fortunately for him, he won't serve any kind of penalty for going the race distance without heading to pit lane. Let's see where the number 69 emerges on track.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned Chris Crossman, Tim. He's only 0.6 of a second behind Ross McGregor, so that could put a bit of a pain to Ross's championship chances if he does get another 7th in this one. As Aaron Martin Pilkington and Pierre-Olivier Clotet contact through scenes. Fortunately, they've both managed to keep it pointing in the right direction. Great car control from the two of them as we cut to a replay. As you can see here, I think we're going to catch the infamous bump draft from the front bumper or from the bonnet camera of Florian Bauer, the number 10 machine. You can see, look, it just gets closer and closer and closer down the Mistral straight, and you'll see in a second, look, you can see it getting closer. There's the nudge. There, just about sits back. Not yet, it's going to happen. Wait for it, any second. Now there's the little nudge. There's another one for good luck, and he's going, go on. What, 3rd time lucky, we'll shift you through. There's the final one, and that's going to be the one that was telling, because you can see he just backs off there, doesn't he, Tim? And just lets the move happen. But just going back to these guys here, fantastic car control. Hopefully nothing coming. Look like a racing incident, but brilliant car control from the both of them to keep that thing pointing in a straight line.
So close for Aaron losing the race right there, but he kept it on the grey stuff, kept it pointing the right direction. Still in P10. Mitchell did come out from the pits in 8th place, and he's 2 seconds behind Chris Crossman. I don't think he'd be able to close that gap, but the gap at the top of the standings has definitely reduced. 2.5 seconds between Critchley and Raya at the top of the standings as Pierre-Olivier Cloutier looks to the inside of Aaron Martin Pilkington. A rather ambitious move into turn 3, wasn't really on, opts to just file back in behind the Simsport Solutions car. I think Raya now is just cruising to the line. He's about to cross the start finish, and this will be heading on to the final lap of the race, so the timer will elapse whilst they're on this next lap, and he'll serve the checkered flag come the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got plenty of gap in front of him as well, so he should be fairly comfortable as he comes on to that final lap. Like you say, we're going to keep our focus on the Mistral Straight at the moment, though, that all the 1.8 kilometres of it, I think we've mentioned it once or twice so far this evening. Pierre-Olivier Clotet, all over the back of the Simsport Solutions 626 machine of Aaron Martin Pilkington. Hopefully we don't see a synchronised slide again like we did before. Clotet very, very close at the back end of the number 626 machine. He is pushing him round, seen there as they go into Debose. There's a car behind them going very, very wide, as does Aaron Martin Pilkington. Leaves the door open but firmly slams it shut on the second apex. They come to the final sector. You can only assume that Pierre-Olivier Clotet is on fresh rubber based on the amount of traction he's getting out of some of these slower corners. But we focus back to our race leader at the moment, flashing his lights down the Mistral Straight. I don't know if he's got a back marker in front of him. I didn't see one. Darrell Upton is the next man up on track, and he's a fair way ahead of him. So I don't know if he's watching the stream and chucking his lights on for good effect. But you can see Kev Critchley in the background. Just goes back to wonder, Tim, what would have happened had their pit stop times been the same halfway through this race? What could have been?
Well, like we say, it's only 3 seconds the difference at the pit stops, and the gap at the moment is 2.1, so that would have handed to a completely different result. Props to Burke, he's managed to hold on to 3rd place on exceptionally old tyres, and looks to be taking another podium in this series. That's going to be crucial come season end at Silverstone. Every point will count.
Absolutely, as the timer hit 0 and Tom Ryer flashing his lights, please just make sure you get it through the rest of the race. Okay, Tom, you've got 2 more corners to circumnavigate. Goes through to Pomp for the 43rd and final time, and Tom Ryer for the MSL Motorsport consultancy team, the number 2 machine, that beautiful Rothmans livery, takes the win at Paul Ricard. Kev Critchley just over a second and a half back in the end, comes through for an admirable second place. It's first and second as it was in qualifying. Luca Burke gaining positions off the start and coming through to a very respectable 3rd place in the end, keeping his championship lead keeping his championship hopes in contention at the top end of the timing charts, coming through third position. Jack McIntyre 5 seconds back, coming through in fourth, with Jack Noller unfortunately not able to hold off the Zancho Simsport man in fifth place. Ross McGregor, Mr. Consistency, kept himself under the radar, holds off Chris Crossman for sixth and seventh, and Regan Mitchell, the man who we thought would never pit, comes out to finish the race in eighth place, 2 gained from his qualifying position and 4 gained from being down in 12th. We're going to go back to what we're doing now. Martin Pilkington losing the position on the final lap. It seems contact through Bendor as they go into the final couple of corners. It's going to be a right, left, right. Aaron's going to have to go for something very, very late indeed if he wants to try and get the position in the top 10 back off Pierre-Olivier Clotet. He's got one more chance going through De La Tour and into DuPont. He's going to be a bit too late. He's going to try to cut back, but it's going to be too little too late. He's lost it on the final lap. David Belanger, in the meantime, comes through for a very impressive ninth position, and Pierre-Olivier Clotet makes it 2 EGT Motorsport cars in the top 10. Aaron Martin Pilkington dropping out on the final lap. Dan Handover just pips Bastian Zenefels to 12th on the line. Tom Lavoie, Darrell Upton, Florian Bauer and Steve Hinden round out your finishing drivers. And Tim, goodness me, we might not have seen the race we were hoping for at the top, barring that first stint, but we saw some fantastic action through the grid there, didn't we?
Well, some really exciting battles up and down the order. And once again, this feature race format, this 90-minute race with a mandatory pit stop, but with no limits on what the strategy holds, is really throwing the doors open to some interesting battles out there on track. Luca Burke trying to go the race distance, opting for track position over fresh rubber in that second stint, and it didn't play out for our season 1 champion. He then was getting passed rather convincingly by Ryan Critchley, but he did go down without a fight, did he, Luca? He did try and make those old tyres work for him, but just proved that rubber wasn't the best towards the second half of that one. And again, another important race for the championship. Tom Ryer winning. He's going to leapfrog up the order, taking an important race victory actually away from the likes of Critchley, Burke and McIntyre, who finished 4th in the end. So some important points changes there. And with the championship heading into, well, we've got to say, the run in now to the championship finale at Silverstone, and indeed the run into the championship being decided, tonight's event is going to have been a crucial part of the standings come the checkered flag at Silverstone.
Absolutely. You see the highlights on screen at the moment. We'll get thoughts from everyone in a minute. Tim, I'm sure you've just disappeared down into the interview to have a chat with our top 3 and anyone else who chooses to appear as well. And I think what we'll do is we'll hand over to you, Tim, so you can have a chat with our podium finishers to begin with, and anyone else who fancies dropping in for a quick chat with you as well. I know they like to come and chat with you these days.
Well, I'm down here in the interview booth. Thank you very much, David. And yes, I am joined here by our race winner, Tom Ryer. Now, Tom, what a battle that was at the front, because you were harried all the way by Critchley, but a pole, race win, and having to pass Burke as well on track. That was certainly an experience tonight. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was super hard race, especially with the big slipstream on the straight. It was not easy to get Critch out of the slipstream.
And how was your qualifying? Because we joked about last time out, Kyle Army, that you hadn't qualified and starting further down the order. And David and myself were saying, look, if Tom can get in qualifying and set a time, he'll be right up the order. Another pole position. How was that?
Yeah, lap felt actually quite good. I didn't practice on fast track. Maybe I should do that next time, because the lap time was quite something. But yeah, felt good. Second pole of the season. Yeah, let's see what Imola brings, right?
And a different strategy from yourself, I believe, compared to Spa, where you didn't take tyres. Tonight you did take tyres. Do you think that would have changed your view going forwards this season and indeed into the final feature race at Silverstone? Do you think that fresh rubber in the second stint is crucial?
I mean, it heavily depends on how hard you destroy your tires, because Spa, you're not really killing your tires in the GT4s because you have so much turn on the way we set up the car. But here in Paul Ricard, especially with the corners after the long straight, you're just killing your left front and left rear tire, and you cannot drive with that tire for 90 minutes. We will see what Silverstone brings, but I don't think we are going to take tires there.
So another victory in GT4 machinery for you, Tom. How does this one rank against your performances in other series? Because it's a very competitive grid here at Esport Designs Cayman Supercup.
I mean, just look at the names: Quitchley, McIntyre, Berg, Jensen Button. Like, there's nothing to compare those guys against. So it feels amazing to get P1 here.
Well, congratulations on your result tonight, Tom, and look forward to seeing you next time out at Imola.
Thank you.
We'll go over to our second place finisher, Kev Critchie from BD Racing. Kev, that was certainly a thrilling event from start to finish, a close qualifying again. And P2, you must be very happy. And after saying that you're in this championship just to enjoy yourself, you certainly must be smiling tonight.
Tim, yeah. Oh, I mean, very, very hard work. Tom's pace just absolutely lightning. I mean, yeah, I thought I was doing okay in quali. I thought I left a 10th or so on the table, similar to Tom's time. But I mean, a great lap. You have to put it together around here. It's a long lap. But yeah, the long race. So yeah, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed to come out a few seconds behind Tom. I think his first stint flattered me a little bit. I've assumed he had a little bit more fuel on and didn't have to take as much fuel in the stop. Either that or I got my pit stop completely wrong. But yeah, really hard race.
There's a 3-second difference between your pit times actually, so that might be those extra couple of car lengths that you're mentioning there. But Kev, another strong performance from you, back on the podium, and I alluded to it there. You told us before that you're here to enjoy the racing, here to have fun. Surely your eyes are turning to the championship now with another strong performance this evening and taking points off championship leader Luca Burke.
Honestly, Tim, it is about the fun, and if I find myself sort of getting carried away, I stop practicing too much through the week and and I want to give it me all. Don't get us wrong. I need to represent, but I need to have fun with it as well. Otherwise, I'll sicken myself of it, I think. But yeah, like I say, I'm really enjoying it. And that was a great race. Being so close to Tom in the first stint was exciting. And then obviously having a battle with Luca as well. It was a very hard race. A great racer. Was excellent as well. So really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations on your result tonight, Kev. Look forward to seeing you next time out at Imola.
All right, Jim. Can I just give a shout out to Archie for the help with the setup? He found a couple of tents for me, so just a little shout out.
Brilliant stuff. Well, teamwork going on at BD Racing there. Thank you very much, Kev.
Cheers, Tim.
And we'll go over to our third place finisher, Luca Burke from Rocket Simsport. Luca, you attempted to make that alternate strategy work, but fundamentally the tyres just didn't give you the pace you needed to hold off the likes of Tom Ryan and Kev Critchley. But nonetheless, P3 tonight, another podium and some very important points.
Yeah, to be fair, I wasn't really expecting to be up as high as I was because, truth be told, I didn't really find much time to get prepared for this. So I just kind of improvised with the setup, which me and Al found out during the race that it wasn't right, but oh well. So I figured, well, I'm not gonna gain on the guys ahead on pace alone, and I had a decent enough gap behind that I figured, might as well not change tires, make it a bit more interesting, see what happens. And yeah, in the end, well, got to have a bit of fun with the front runners, if not else, and found out that taking tires is definitely the right strategy.
Well, it was a valiant effort. You were certainly putting up a pretty hard defence against your competitors who had taken fresh tyres. So looking in towards the end of the season now, a sprint race at Imola and then another feature race to round out the championship at Silverstone. What are you expecting from the next two races? Imola we go back to for the first time since the first round of season one. It's a tight, tricky circuit there, but with a sprint race format, it's going to keep everything nice and compact, isn't it?
Oh yes, I'm excited for both of them really, both Imola and Silverstone. They're on my favorites list, so I hope that I find a bit more time for them as well and bring the championship home.
Brilliant stuff, Luca. Well, congratulations on your result tonight. And I'm sure for any of your competitors, if Luca Burke likes Imola and Silverstone, they're going to have a tricky time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll go over to Jack Noller from the MSL Motorsports team. Jack, you had another exciting race. It seems you're always in the thick of it in this Esport Designs Cayman Supercup, always at the heart of the action. How was your race tonight? Again, opting for a different strategy and I believe not taking tyres, but another thrilling 90-minute race here in this championship.
Qualifying was good. Messed up my last lap, so even though it was like probably 0.15 to P3, I was just the wrong side of that. Then a difficult start, but then just settled into the race, thinking the only way to get past these guys really is do something different. So I tried it, as you said, not taking tyres. But before the stops, I was catching Jack and Burke a little bit. So I thought, let's just try something, see what happens. Ultimately, it wasn't quite the way to go this time, but managed to keep Jack behind for a little bit with a little help. So that was good fun for a bit there. So give the RJN guys a bit of their own teamwork because they've got all the teamwork. So a little bit of teamwork back to them. So, but it was great fun racing. Like I said, always in the thick of it. So looking forward to the next one.
Well, another strong result from you. That was P5 tonight. And looking back at your previous performances this season, another strong tally of points against your name. Do you consider yourself an outside chance at the championship, or are you here taking it race by race?
Well, I'm taking it race by race. The championship would be brilliant, but tonight I was generally seem to be on the pace a bit more than I have been the last few nights, which is very positive. If it goes wrong for those ahead, maybe I have a bit of a shot, but more of a shot of a top 3 would be a brilliant result. But race by race, and if anything comes at the championship, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on your result tonight, Jack, and thanks for dropping in to speak to us. And we'll go over to Florian Bauer, who the Esport Designs number 10 Cayman. Florian, another race that didn't really go your way. We saw plenty of drive-through penalties seeming to land at your door, but you certainly got yourself involved in the action. Do you want to talk us through the bump drafting moment with Jack?
Yeah, a bit unlucky evening for me as well. Yeah, quali wasn't too good. Just nailed the first run in the first tire on green track. Yeah, in the end, started from P13. Had a good recovery to, I guess, P7 it was when I got the first drive-through, and then I knew, okay, it's gonna be over now. Just try to get some fun in the race. Try to get the fastest lap. Not sure if I got it. And yeah, in the end, I tried to help Jack, staying in front of Jack there, of the other Jack, I mean. And yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't keep himself in front. And yeah, I tried him to bump draft to get him a bit faster on the straight. And yeah, for one moment, it just worked out. So yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I believe from the timing screens you did indeed get the fastest lap, but I'll say that's provisional just in case I'm incorrect. And like you say, Florian, you had a great start to the race, fought your way up the order. Do you think then qualifying is something you need to focus on? Is that where your race performances could be improved? Because you had a 4th place at Misano on the grid, but besides that, your other performances have seen you kind of hovering around the 10th place mark. Is that a position, part of your race evening that you think you could improve?
Yeah, of course, can improve in quali. Yeah. Didn't had the luck today because I took a setup which is quite slippery on exits, and yeah, I had some problems in turn 1 where I deleted my lap or just were slower than before, and then yeah, in the end, bit unlucky. I think the quali time was to go into top 7 or something like that, and I just have to get the lap through and yeah. Be in that position.
Sorry, Florian. Congratulations on the result this evening. Look forward to seeing you next time out at Imola. Hoping for a clean race there. Is it a track you enjoy?
Yeah, I pretty like Imola, to be honest. Checkouts should be the problem there. Good for me. Yeah, let's see what's possible there. Really looking forward to that.
Well, thank you very much, Florian. Congratulations on your result this evening.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
And we'll head back up to David in the commentary box. David, interesting to hear from the drivers there. Interesting to hear from Luca that he's already turning his mind towards the championship at the end of Silverstone. And interesting, like we say, to hear from Kev Critchley. If he keeps having fun, I'm pretty sure everyone else is not going to be having too much enjoyment, because he's very quick in that BD racing car.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, two big takeaways from that one. One, yeah, if Kev Critchley puts his mind to it and I don't want to say focuses more, but maybe takes a bit of the fun out of the equation, he's going to be a very difficult man to beat. And as well as that, I was a little bit worried by the ominous part of Luca Burke's comment where he said he probably was left a little bit on the table and didn't really practice very much. And like you say, he's a big fan of Imola and Silverstone. So yeah, I mean, if they weren't already, it's going to be two fantastic spellbinding rounds still left to come. And that was, yeah, I mean, that was the icing on the cake, really, for the penultimate feature race of the season. Of course, we know that strategy really throws the cat amongst the pigeons, and it really did do this evening, didn't it?
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a way we can set a timer on Luca Burke's sim rig so that it can be limited the time, because we had another great race tonight, and Luca on the back foot manages to come up in third place. But Tom Ryer, again, standout performance for me. He really made amends for that Spa race where he started first and came under threat early on, and rather got beaten up and bullied and chewed up and spat out by the Zancho and Rocket Simsport cars in that opening stint. A bit of a comeback drive, I'd say, from him in terms of his season so far. I must remember, this is only his third race in the championship. He's making a name for himself. I'm pretty sure he's got plenty more to give in the remaining two races. But we get the feeling, David, championship is going to be going right down to the wire.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, that will bring us to the end of tonight's broadcast. But do not miss anything in the last two rounds of the season. We will see you all at the same time next week for round 6, which we've mentioned enough times is going to be at Imola, and then we'll finish off the season on the 7th of June at Silverstone for the finale. It's a feature race in a couple of weeks' time. It's a sprint race at Imola next week, so it's back to the roots and a return to only the second track in the series that we're going to repeat. Of course, we started the first season at Imola and we had a fantastic race there as well, so sure, we're going to get some brilliant action. But on behalf of myself, my commentary partner Tim Fullbrook, and our broadcast director Steve Proudley, we'd like to thank you as always for watching this eSport Designs Cayman Supercup round here at Paul Ricard in association with MSL Motorsport Consultancy, and of course supported by the likes of Race Department, Porsche Motorsport, Simracing.gp and Simsport Solutions alike. And we will see you guys again next Monday. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay well. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you then. Good night.